Okay. Let's get into this. Oh, and of course, right as I start, my daughter. Alrighty. Okie dokie. Alright, where is this guy at? Hold on. I'm gonna jump into this guy's Discord and I'm gonna ping him 100 times. Hold up. Uno momento. 1 second. Oh wait, do I even have StreamerBot on? I do. Okay. Good. Where is George's stream? Where is George's stream? Middle of a game? Oh, why is he so quiet? Might just be me. How much longer till I rock? Rock? How much longer till our luck runs out? How much longer? Ooh. Thief 2, the Metal Age? Interesting, interesting. Everdream Valley, Saints Row, Get Out of Hell. Amnesia Rebirth. How much longer? My sensitivity is really low here, I feel like. Can I adjust my sensitivity here? I can't. Give me a second. I can't hear your bitch ass. Alright, fuck you then. Alright. Just... Okay. Bruh. Why do I always get a Psylocke on my team that just stands in the middle of the front line, does nothing? Yet the fucking Psylocks I get, they always target the healers in the back. Like they're ganking and flanking and shit. I don't understand.
They escaped the farms. They murdered good citizens of Super Earth. Now, they're coming for you. The only thing that can stop them... A strong economy. Don't let your family get murdered. Spend your extra cash
I've been
today.
waiting for this moment, for the perfect time to strike. When you're home so close and you've reached your coast, that's when our paths collide. Did you join the VC yet?
I'm here, you stupid.
Oh, my fault. I couldn't tell if I was still watching on Twitch or not.
My fault. Is my mic mic really that quiet?
It sounds a little quiet, even in Discord.
Even in Discord. Let me see.
I mean, I don't have Discord turned up very loud in Beacon, to be honest. I only have it at 50. Maybe I just have to turn that up. You might be fine. It might just be me.
It might just be stupid.
I have been hooked on Epic the Musical lately. Okay, how to Epic the Musical? It's the...
Oh,
Yeah.
I know what that is.
I've been fucking hooked on it. I've listened to like the whole thing like 6 times.
Nice.
All right. Since George is addicted to this shitty game, I guess maybe we'll just watch him and watch him suck for a little bit before, you know? And watch him suck for a little bit before.
That was a snipe with a shield. That was so sick. Come here, dick.
You didn't snipe with the shield. It bounced off the ground. You calm down.
You calm down. You calm down right now.
All right, let's see here. I'm just gonna switch you over to here.
Yo, have you been keeping up with the Diddy trial?
That fake AI shit.
No, that girl. There's a reporter who is in the actual jury and shit. Not the jury, but like she's reporting on the actual trial. Like it's behind closed doors because they wanted shit to be, not televised. But she's like going off of like she's there, but she's also explaining like the transcript of the whole trial because that's public knowledge. But she's also like including perspectives from like the council of Diddy.
The council of Diddy.
Yeah, the legal council of Diddy.
The council of Diddy. That just.
The council of Diddy. What bakes in that council?
Oh God, probably. He's the the co-owner of the council.
Yeah. They found out.
Run! How'd you like the Ultron reveal?
It was sick.
I definitely think he's more of a
James Spader, but yeah,
Yeah, well, you know what? This game has a budget, and not everyone makes big pharma money, so you can relax. Anyway,
Fuck you. What's up?
I kind of like the fact that he's pretty much a duelist that can heal.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, I saw, like, when I was looking at his kit, I'm like, not this kit, but like showcasing his abilities. I'm like, he's a DPS.
Yeah, he's just a DPS that can heal. And what I like now is you can have almost an entire team of flyers, kind of, if you count Doctor Strange as a flyer.
Yeah.
Which I think is pretty wild.
Very true.
And I like the fact that, if you get grabbed by Wolverine, Ultron can just say, "Nah, I'm out."
It's like, nah, I'm out, brody. Just backs up.
He's got the freaking
Like
anti-Diddy ability.
Like yeah, the anti-Diddy chain. America never surrenders. Here, Magneto.
Oh,
Stupid.
wow.
Stupid. Maybe they were right. Mutants seem to be eliminated.
That's messed up. I don't know if you can say that,
Oh, Christy called Rain a midget earlier. It was pretty funny.
What?
Because they actually measured her height at work, where she works at. They found out she's actually 4'9".
Wow. You and her are the same height. That's crazy.
Nah, Brody. I am not 4'9". If I was 4'9", I would have fallen off of like a bridge or some shit already.
You have. You fell off the step stool trying to get into your cabinets.
Hey, bro, how's it feel climbing into your little...
Feels pretty good.
Feels pretty good.
It's not as spacious, for tall people like me, but you should fit in there just fine.
Brody needs a booster seat to drive.
I'm just gonna get one of those smart cars.
Actually, that's Rain. My fault.
I actually low-key really want one of those stupid, ugly little smart cars. The ones that only has like 1 or 2 seats.
You mean the little tiny ones that are like you're taller than, or?
Yeah. They were like the first like fully electric cars, and people were like, "Oh, EVs are ugly." And then Tesla, the whole point of Tesla was to make EVs that looked good, and then it went full circle, making the Cybertruck, going back to the ugly designs. But beside the point.
Cybertruck's fucking
trash can.
Elon Musk.
Magnum opus. Speaking of magnum opus, you ever heard of Pixar's magnum opus?
Shut the fuck up. I hate Ratatouille so much. Holy shit.
That's messed up.
It's a decent movie, but it's not that good. Like, I don't know why people like, because that fucking Reeves dude said it, and everyone's fucking saying it. It's like, it's not that good of a movie. Relax.
It's a movie that I watched once, and then I'm like, I don't need to watch it again.
It's basically Cinderella, but as a rat.
It's basically Cinderella, but as a rat. I don't
You know
know.
what they should remake?
I don't recall Cinderella ever cooking, or running a restaurant, or, you know.
Well, it's the same premise, right? Remy's like a poor rat, wants to be like a fine dining chef, but just change that into like a peasant girl into a fucking princess. Same idea.
Yeah, but there's also no magic, you know? There's no magic fairy, there's no there's no fairy godmother, there's no
Magic,
evil
yeah,
sisters, there's no... I think you're
but
coping.
controlling a dude's cooking ability with his hair is kind of reaching, though. If I'm being completely
Yeah, in a movie about a talking rat, that's the part that reaches. That's the...
To be fair, they don't talk. They talk amongst each other, stupid.
Well, yes, but,
Remy
you know,
can't
stupid.
talk to the chefs, you know? He can't talk to the...
Yes, he can, stupid, by controlling his hair.
You just go squeak, 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 squeaker.
That was a really good... You make a really good rat. Did you act in that movie?
Yeah, I was actually Remy's brother, the one that ate all the food.
I don't have a doubt in my mind about that. I mean, what?
Dude, if I got a role in a Pixar movie, I wouldn't be here.
You'd be Yogurt Man.
Hell yeah. Dude, they should make a Pixar movie about yogurt.
A Pixar movie about yogurt. They did. It was Shrek.
Yogurt. Dude, remember Shrek themed Go-Gurt? Shit was lit.
Oh, man.
Come on. We got this.
I need to look up.
The high Rosts are disrespect. Look, listen. Ratatouille is not that good of a movie, and anyone tells you otherwise is delusional. Brody, my left foot can write a better movie than Ratatouille.
That's wild.
And my left foot's flat as fuck.
I believe it. You drinking that nerd shittergy again?
Dude, I'm so mad. I think nerds might be going under.
Oh, no. You better use that big pharma money to save them.
Get the fuck out of here. No, I'm sad because they haven't restocked them, and then me and Christy went before she went up back to Washington for her stupid concert. We went back to HEB, and then I saw 3 0-calorie nerds, and I'm like, dude, what the fuck? Why'd they just pack 3? But you know, so I bought all 3.
Well, maybe, there's other things happening. You know, like maybe they just haven't restocked.
Maybe Big Pharma's going down finally.
Maybe Big Pharma's going down. You're wild.
You know,
What a wild thing to say.
I call it now though. Like the moment a cure for cancer is like found, for any type of cancer, like people are gonna go crazy.
Right? Didn't you know? Actually, my cousin said they already have the cure for cancer.
Let me tell you about them.
Well, that's where they hide the cure for cancer.
And King Tutankhamun's tomb.
I heard that the semen of the King Tut would cure your cancer.
They're mummified.
Oh,
Your session will
man.
be terminated due to inactivity in 2 minutes.
Tell you what.
I totally forgot I had Helldivers running in the background and the intercom started talking and I was like, what the fuck is happening?
Helldivers.
What was I doing? Oh, yeah.
We're playing after this match. I'm done with this shit.
Right? That's why I just never play it. The original
I can't wait
Think a
till
Drink.
Ultron comes out, though. I'm legit gonna be spamming Ultron.
Yeah, Ultron will be fun. Well, I don't play enough to really care because it kind of sucks. I'm just kidding. It's just my ADHD kicking in where I can't. Sold out. Wow, it's sold out on their stores. Maybe it's just, sold out everywhere. Nerd focus.
Oh yeah, no, the 0-calorie you can buy, but not the sugar one.
Yeah, because I hate this. Dude, did you watch? Did I ever see? Oh my god, I look like I'm being flashbanged. Holy shit.
What happened?
I'm on the Nerd Focus website, and my camera is not, like, adjusting. And so I just look pale as fuck. I'm already pale, so that doesn't help anything.
Rose
Did I
Mega
send
Pale.
you the thing with Dr. Mike and he was discussing
The vaccine with like 20 anti-vaxxers or whatever?
no. It was on his own podcast. On his own, he does a podcast where he takes two people from opposing views and they kind of like debate. And it was a biologist or something, a microbiologist, debating with one of those organic food professionals or whatever.
It was like two ladies, right?
Yes.
One was a microbiologist scientist, and the other one was like she's a doctor too, wasn't she?
Yeah.
She was I forgot what she was, but she was was she in fuck, I forgot, orthopedic or
Stupid.
I forgot what. Well, no, I mean orthopedic's a real thing, but like.
No, I know, but
She was stupid. Yeah, she was definitely stupid. It's like.
Well, actually,
you
listen.
have the source to or the research to back up everything that's proven that works, but you're over here trying to deny that. And what I hate it. So one of my friend doctors, I was talking about him about this a few days ago. Actually, yeah, a few days ago I was talking to him, and we were talking about like how a lot of doctors are just doing that shit now just for fame or whatever, or I guess clout. Where doctors will say something controversial, not enough to get their medical licenses revoked, but just enough to start stirring controversy, and then they spin off of that and get popular that way, and in turn makes them more money. And I feel like that's what this lady was doing too, because she has the medical background to understand like how certain chemicals and shit work. But like, there's actually been proof that organic food isn't at all that much better for you than normal vegetable food. Like, I know there's a lot of controversy with GMOs and stuff like that. But on a molecular level, GMOs or the original vegetable, they're the same thing. All they are is just what they mean by genetically modified. They've just been cloned or multiplied or whatever. That's the only difference.
yeah, and I love how she basically was all like, I love when she said, "Your body does not care where the vitamin comes from." No, she's like, if you get vitamin C from a lab, your body does not give a shit that it's vitamin C from a lab. It doesn't care. It cannot differentiate the vitamin C from an orange from the vitamin C in a lab. It just cares that it's vitamin C. It doesn't care. It doesn't matter. And then she went on this whole thing about how like the whole like organic foods and the non-GMO stuff have caused so many issues like economically and whatnot, because now you have all these, and she talked about like parabens and stuff in like care products and hair care products. And she was like, because of this misunderstanding of what parabens are, people are now looking for alternatives which aren't as safe as these things that have been studied and specifically designed to do these things. And then I love how that lady, she got offended too, because Dr. Love was like, society is not scientific, what'd she say? Scientifically, not intelligent, but literate. I think she said they're not scientifically literate enough.
Yep.
Or something like that. And then the lady got all offended. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, but you're proving her point.
Yep. It's usually it's funny, like the really intelligent people, you won't ever see them get flustered because they know what they're talking about. But also at the same time, if they are ignorant of the topic, they will sit there and listen. They won't get upset. They won't get mad. They'll try to understand. Like Dr. Mike does a really good job of doing that.
Yeah.
Like, he tries, like, even if he doesn't understand something or a different perspective, he'll sit there and listen. He won't interrupt you. He won't get emotional. He'll just, because that's why I love Dr. Mike, dude. That's why I've been following that dude for a fucking good while.
Yeah.
And I try to be a lot like him, where if I'm not getting your perspective, I want to learn like why you think the way you do, not to insult you or to find fault in you. I just want to understand. I want to learn more, like why you think the way you do. Nothing
I love Dr. Mike. I've been watching Dr. Mike for a long time. And I love the way that like he watches videos or he like reacts to content and stuff that makes me like verbally say like, oh, are you stupid? Like, what are you doing that? And he just has such a straight face. Like he doesn't even react or say anything. And he like explains it in such like a respectful way. That's like nothing is stupid. It's all a matter of like people's perspectives and like their intelligence and whatnot. And I'm like, man, my face, I couldn't do it. My face just talks for itself. My face would just have the like, even if I'm like, oh well, that's not quite how it works. My face will say, "Are you a fucking dumbass?"
Yeah.
And
and I again, like Dr. Mike, he's even said like a lot of people say I'm a perfect doctor. He's like, don't say that. I'm not perfect. I have my faults too, but I like his message that he aspires to be um, a very empathic and patient and knowledgeable doctor so that the end game is that he can provide the highest level of care to his patients. And
Yeah.
I love that the way he puts that because that's exactly kind of the way I am a little bit. Like I try to understand um, different perspectives,
So
but
wait, you are a
obviously
doctor with
I'm not.
patience?
I'm okay. Okay, shut the fuck up. I'm not a doctor, but like I don't try to belittle anybody. I don't try to hurt anyone. I don't try to make them feel stupid. I try to really get there. Like I want you to tell me step by step how you came to that conclusion, and I want to understand like why you think the way you do, so I can then either respond to it in the best way I can and explain to you like why X Y Z can't be X Y and Z, but also maybe help you guide you to see it from a different perspective. If I can't convince you, then hopefully maybe it'll make you think, and that at the end of the day, that's all I really want. Which is
Yeah.
again what Dr. Mike also wants to as well.
When are we going to start a podcast?
Shut the.
I really thought, I have unironically really thought about starting a podcast. Of course, it would be strictly research based because I do not have any type of degree that puts me in any position to speak on a lot of like topics. But it would be interesting and fun to start a podcast that actually researches the things like on the spot. You know what I mean? Or like even if you do like a little bit of research, and this could be anything from God, as much as I kind of am gonna regret saying it, anything from like politics to science. You know what I mean? And just having like, I feel like there's a problem, and I talk to my mom. I say this to my mom and my wife all the time, that it's like I feel like the biggest problem when it comes to like politics is nobody's willing to communicate. It's such a taboo topic that nobody talks about it. And because nobody talks about it, nobody gets the information. There's no connection. There's no like there's no actual human interaction when it comes to it. So everyone's just stuck in their own little bubbles because nobody wants to talk about it. It's too taboo. It's too scary to talk about. Which again is it also just adds on to the fact that when you do talk about it, because people have been in their bubble for so long, it makes it politics gets pretty heated because they've believed this thing for so long, and changing people's beliefs is like nobody wants to be wrong about anything. So it's just this constant cycle of like, well, we can't talk about it because it's taboo, but because we don't talk about it, we'll never be able to talk about it in a proper setting.
It all falls under like that saying. How does it go? People don't listen to understand. They listen to respond. And
Yes,
I think that's
I've used that saying so many times.
Yeah, it's a very valid statement, and it's frustrating too because a lot. So one of the things that I did when I was in college in my senior year is we would have these courses, right? But they weren't courses. What they were scientific discussions. Like we would talk about like the findings in research literature, and then like the professor would say, "Hey, read this," and then in the next class meeting, I want y'all to go over it, and then I want y'all to discuss it. And if you want, we could debate like what this and what that means, and what it means for like the economy and society, and like what like a good example is like this is funny because this is way before it became a thing, but using GLP-1s, which is Ozempic, as a treatment for weight loss. But this is early on when they were still being studied. And then we did talk about the ramifications of society of like how would that change the dynamic in the health industry and society as a whole? Would it be beneficial or would it be bad? And that's when like we started, entering topics of discussion, debate, stuff like that. Of like, okay, is this going to be something worth talking about? And lo and behold, people had opinions on it, and it was interesting because the one thing about college students is that college is a very weird state for a lot of for people because they're not I mean they're adults, but they're not exactly mature adults, so people get heated pretty quickly in colleges. It's kind of funny.
I believe it.
I don't know. I don't know if you've seen what's his name? Oh, that was sick. I don't know if you've seen Change My Mind by that guy. I forgot his name. He doesn't do it anymore, but he used to be like a social commentator. He would discuss like very controversial topics on college campuses. What the fuck's his name? Anyway, the point is that he used to just sit in college campuses and talk about very controversial topics. Like, for example, there are only two genders. Change my mind. And
Yeah.
people, like obviously in college campuses, people will come in and say like there are non-binary, there's they, them, and like there's different genders. But like he would say they're like, no, scientifically there are two genders. There's male and female. That is it. But then like obviously people get heated. But like most of his stuff, if you watch it, I mean I say he's smart in this aspect because he knew how to drive engagement, because he knew this would get a ride out of people. Because again, like I said, college students are, yes, they're adults, but they're very immature adults, and they don't know how to control their own temper, their emotions. So whenever you say something that goes against what they say, kind of like alluding back to what you said, they start to get heated. They start to get elevated. They start to raise their voice. They start to get more defensive, and it sucks though, because that is actually kind of
I'm guilty of that.
Well, I mean, we all are, we're all human. I'm guilty of that too. When I was in college, there was this one time I was arguing, not arguing, but I was debating with this one guy where there was this like multi-phase study of this one medication to treat, I forgot what it was. I think it was hypercholesterolemia, which is just high cholesterol. And it was showing a huge reduction of LDL-C and the bad cholesterol and stuff like that. But like, there was like 2% side effects of, what was it? Enlarged heart, and I forgot, it was like vein thrombosis, and like a 1% chance of vein thrombosis producing, and that could kill you. But like he was saying that 2 and 1% was enough to stop the trial. He's like, they should have stopped after that one person got deep vein thrombosis and enlarged heart. And it's like, dude, that one person, had that side effect, but 10,000 other people saw a reduction in LDL and their cholesterol, and they also saw a reduction in cardiovascular events.
That drives me insane. I cannot stand. I'm super guilty of the whole, like, I get really passionate about things I talk about, because when I talk about a lot of stuff I do, I'm not thinking of just me. I'm thinking of like a future for, obviously my daughter and whatnot. But I cannot stand when people take one case of something and then they make it that everything is based on that one case. It's like, okay, well, 10,000 people drive a car, one person wrecked, so we should all just stop driving cars.
Right.
It's like, no, that's not how it works. And the thing, especially when it comes to like medications and whatnot, is when you have however many people we have, and then you have a kind of one-size-fits-all medication, there are going to be, one-off cases of crazy side effects. That's just how it works, because biology is very complicated. Our bodies are very complicated. So you can't judge an entire thing based on, the effects of one person, or like even like a small handful of people. And then there's also other factors too.
English US.
Oh, okay. I don't know why.
English US.
Why are you talking to me? Hold on. Why did my Helldivers 2 just say English US? Stop
Subtitle mode.
it. I don't want
to speech.
Text to speech.
Stop it. You stop it right now.
Off. Okay, it was broken for a second there. Anyway, I have a family member who does these he does the black walnut tincture things. It's supposed to like cleanse you out, right?
Oh yeah.
And I've looked into, because I actually try to like research things when people say stuff. I actually try to go in there and be like, okay, well, what are the benefits of this? Are there actually benefits, or is this just like, some other backwoods medicine thing? So I look into it. There are benefits of black walnuts, and like a black walnut tincture can have, medical benefits for you. But what he does is he takes this black walnut tincture, and he talks about it all the time as if it's like a cure-all. And he's like, I feel so much younger. I feel like 20 years younger. I feel so much better. And then one thing that, in my mind, I'm like, okay, but you also do physical labor every day. You started doing physical labor every day. You walk every day. What you do every day requires you to be up and on your feet multiple times a day for hours a day, something that you didn't used to do. So the fact that you feel better and feel more energized could have very little to do with this black walnut tincture thing and more to do with the way your lifestyle has changed. You know, you start drinking less, you start exercising more, even if it's not technically considered exercise like going to the gym, but you're up, you're lifting things, you work on a farm, you are being healthier, you are still being active, you know? And it's like, sure, I'm sure it can help you. I'm sure it just make you, you know, it make you feel good. But you can't say it's like a cure-all, you know? You can't just hand it to somebody who has no changes in lifestyle and say, this will make you feel so much better. You know what I mean? It's just like, it doesn't work like that. Our bodies are not, they're not simple things, you know? But it's also at the same time, it's like, what's whatever you want to do. If you feel fine, doing that, then by all means, you know, keep doing it. But I just don't like when I don't like when they act like it's the only thing you can do to feel better. Like, oh, this is it. This is the cure-all. This is the fix for all of your problems. That's not how it works. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like,
It's just crazy.
I think a good example to back that up is people who can tolerate Tylenol, people who can tolerate ibuprofen. They both kind of solve the same thing. Like, if you have a headache, you can take either one. But there's a reason why there's multiple medications over the counter for headaches. It's because some people are allergic to Tylenol, and then vice versa. Some people are allergic to ibuprofen or NSAIDs. So, you know, it would suck if we just had a world of Tylenol for headaches, because the people who are allergic reactive to it, they can't take it, so they got to sit there and suck it up, right?
Yep. I also learned recently that Tylenol and ibuprofen are processed differently in the body. That's why you can cycle between them and whatnot, because I think one's processed by the kidney and one by the liver, I think.
Yep, Tylenol's the liver, ibuprofen's the kidney, yeah.
Yeah, that was something I learned that I thought was really cool. It's like, I didn't think about that. That's really cool.
But there is
Again,
a black box label, yeah, because you learned. But there is a black box label, though, that taking Tylenol almost all the time, though, can lead to liver damage. And that's been proven. So,
yeah.
It's a, you know, don't be, like, it's funny to me that I know that there are people out there in the world who take Tylenol every single day because they have this chronic pain, and their doctors are like telling them, like, don't do that, like swap out to ibuprofen or something else. But then obviously, because Tylenol does have a main ingredient of acetaminophen, but it's also caffeine.
Yeah.
Caffeine, a lot of people think caffeine is just a wake up drug or whatever. It's not. It's actually got a lot of therapeutic effects too. But the thing is, when you over intake acetaminophen combined with caffeine, that causes liver damage. And when I used to work at a liver clinic years ago, we would come in with these patients who have elevated liver enzymes, and one of the things that we saw a lot was in their medical history or their concomitant medications that we would take down, they would take Tylenol a lot. And then we asked them, like, hey, you take Tylenol how many milligrams? They're like, oh, we take 2 pills, so 400 milligrams every single day. It's like, dude, what the fuck are you doing?
That's wild.
Yeah, and then so we would have to kick them out, though, because the hepatologist that we worked with at the site, he would say we can't use these patients because they're not affected by non-alcoholic steatohepatitis. They're actually being affected by a metabolic steatohepatitis. Metabolic, all that. So the difference is that non-alcoholic steatohepatitis is basically just inflammation of the liver, but it's due to other outside factors like diet, lack of exercise. People think you can only get cirrhosis of the liver through alcohol. Well, that's not true. You can actually get it through poor lifestyle choices. You can also get it genetically, but that's a different topic. For metabolic metabolic non-alcoholic steatohepatitis, it's the same thing, but that's because of the of way your body processes certain things like medications. That's the big difference. But at the time, though, MASH or metabolic steatohepatitis wasn't really understood. We knew about NASH, non-alcoholic steatohepatitis, but we didn't know much about MASH. So we couldn't put these patients into these studies because of that reason. But dude, it's crazy how many people who live with chronic pain and just don't go see a pain doctor or an orthopedist, or they don't see a doctor for pain because most of the time it's because they can't afford it because they don't have the insurance for it. But a lot of the times too, at the same time, is because they're just lazy. They don't want to go see a doctor. It's like, if this Tylenol every single day takes care of my pain and I can get moving, why would I go see a doctor? And I think that's such a big logical fallacy because, again, long-term usage of Tylenol can cause liver damage. And at that point, if it gets to the point where you're cirrhotic, you're done. Like, you either got to sign up for a liver transplant, which you probably won't get because, again, you caused that to you. That's self-inflicted cirrhosis. You'll be put at the bottom of the transplant list because that was caused by something you did. It's like they're treated the same way alcoholics are in transplant lists. So you'll be put below people who get like genetically affected steatohepatitis, people who just have predetermined genetics to just have a shitty liver. What's even wilder, dude, is that people or kids at like 11 years old, 10 years old, they can get cirrhosis of the liver just because their genetic makeup made it so, which is wild. And they can't do nothing about it. They just, they're born and then their liver just gives up at like 11 years old, and it's insane. So those patients will be put at the top of this. But anyway, I'm rambling. But basically, yeah, Tylenol and ibuprofen and NSAID, non-steroid anti-inflammatory drugs. I'm glad that there are multiple drugs of those that do the same thing, but have different routes, different methods of treating the same thing. But it is back to the point we were making about how like some people hyper focus on those very small, like very rare side effects. It just kind of blows my mind. Like and I think the way Dr. Mike kind of stated it, which I find which I thought was really impressive because it's very difficult to say it or articulate the point without coming off as self-righteous, like to not come off as like a guy who's looking out for the greater good, right? Because everyone's lives is valuable. Everyone's lives is valuable. Everyone is worth something. We all know that. But in the world of science, in clinical trial research or medication research, if you have 98% of the patient population receive therapeutic or have a therapeutic response without any side effects, and 2% have therapeutic responses, but they also have these side effects, that drug is going to get approved because 98% of that patient population saw relief from whatever the drug needs to treat. That 2% population, they're going to slap those side effects on the box and say, yeah, 2% of the population experience these symptoms, side effects, use at your own risk, talk to your doctor, yada, yada, yada. And again, I do have sympathy or empathy for those who got affected negatively by it, but it's a precarious situation where you have a medication that can treat said indication, but it's really hard to rationalize from a pragmatic point of view that this drug should be retested and processed to something else, just because that 2% had a negative impact by the medication.
Yeah.
Because again, like 98% saw relief. They saw a therapeutic response without any side effects. I understand that 2% is important too, but 98%, you're just gonna have to take that, with what it is and put it on the market, because 98% of the world versus the 2%. Yes, 2% is a lot of people. It's like what, a couple mil, because there's like billions and billions of people on the planet. But yeah, it's hard to rationalize that with people who have what's that word I'm looking for? Where they have personal encounters or personal experiences. And taking a note from Dr. Mike again from that one stream or video he did. Remember when he was arguing against the anti-vaxxer or the anti-vax community or whatever?
Yeah.
He had a response video. I don't know if you saw that, but he talks about like the most common thing he saw was personal anecdotes. And again, he reiterated that like that's important, but at the same time, like you have to understand, like a vaccine, just because it happened to your kid, you can't automatically assume it was the vaccine. What if your child or your relative was predisposed genetically to a disease, you just didn't know it yet, but it just happened to coincidentally happen after that vaccination, right? That would be require more study. But now, what's even more curious is the approved vaccines. I forgot what specific one he talked about, but he was talking about this one lady who said that her son had a side effect to this vaccine, but that side effect was never documented in the extensive clinical trials that vaccine went through. So now you have to sit there and think, like, was it the vaccine, or was it just something this person innately genetically had, but it wasn't active until at that moment or around that time that child got the vaccine? So now that's open up for debate, right?
Yeah.
Because that happens all the time. We get approved medications out into the public, and we then see like side effects that happen that we never really experienced, that we didn't experience in the trials. And even as extensive as clinical trial research is, there are always going to be those outliers. But at the same time, again, how can you rationalize that one individualistic experience versus the millions and millions and millions who saw therapeutic relief from that vaccine?
Yeah, there's I'm gonna say, I say this all the time. When I was in high school, and even like middle school going into high school, I would always hear people talking all the time about how they care about other people and how they would like give the shirt off their back to someone in need. And I feel like that has drastically changed in these days. I feel like it's become such a selfish kind of society. You know what I mean? Because like I remember when the whole when COVID first happened and the COVID vaccine came out, and there are all these wild conspiracies, all this wild stuff about the COVID vaccine. And I was watching this clip of this guy who was going around. He was like one of those the dumb things where they just walk around with a microphone and they're all like, "So what do you think of this?" But he walked around and he asked it was a younger kid, and he was like, "Did you get the COVID vaccine?" And the kid was like, "Well, yeah." And he was like, "Well, did you know the COVID vaccine, we don't know the side effects of it yet, and it could potentially kill you later on in life." And the guy was all like, the younger kid was like, "Yeah, but it could also save more lives. So, I mean," he's like, if it winds up hurting me but saving others, then so what?" And it's just like, that is so rare these days. And it's
rare to have a conversation like that.
it just sucks, because it's also like, that's the way I kind of like to look at it, is it's like, if me getting this thing, or if this thing happening to me affects the people around me and I can prevent it from affecting the people around me, then I should prevent it from affecting the people around me, because I'm not the only person who lives on this planet. I'm not the only human in existence, and we are all the same. I would want somebody to try to protect me. I'd want somebody to try to protect, my daughter, my wife. So I would want to also extend that same respect by doing what I can to protect someone else's daughter, someone else's wife, someone else's family. You know what I mean? It's just this wild concept of like, I don't know. It just feels like people have gotten really selfish, and it sucks.
Yeah, there's been arguments made that social media is a really strong indicator for that, or a causal relationship with that, of why people have become more selfish. Because social media, by definition, is being selfish. You take pictures of yourself, you look good, you want to show off what you're doing. It's just a highlight reel of your life, right? So,
Yeah.
In essence, it's a selfish endeavor. So that was going to be like kind of a one-off side effect of that. When the whole world is hyper-focused on highlight reels or showing off your life, of course, that also chimes in the whole selfish aspect, which then, like you said, kind of bleeds into where we're at now. People not really caring about the fellow man. But it's funny because, like, to relate to that a little bit, is when I was younger, I used to always and I see people begging for money on the side of the streets, like street lights, crossways, whatever, the street lights or whatever. And I would always either give like $1 or $2. And I used to carry cash. I don't carry cash anymore. But I used to give them like $1 or $2. But then I had a debate with my roommate, college roommate at the time. And he's like, "Dude, why'd you give him those $2?" I'm like, "Well, I don't need it. I'm good. I'll be fine. This guy looks like he needs it." But he was telling me like, you don't know if that guy's just going to use that money to get more whatever the heck he's doing, whether that be drugs, alcohol, or whatever. And I'm like, well, my argument was that you got to give him the benefit of the doubt, right? because I don't know that person personally. Maybe, yeah, he's going to do that. That's his prerogative, though, but I chose to donate that money because I wanted to. But then he tried to tell me, like, yes, he's like, I get it that there are people out there who do need the help, but the problem is a lot of people who like to cheat the system, who like to pretend that they are like that, and try to take advantage of people's good nature. And I understood that. I 100% understood that. But for me, I told him, like, I get that, but at the end of the day, it's my decision to do that. But as I've gotten older, you know, and when I got out of the college mindset, and it's funny because I'm a victim of this too. I have become a little bit more selfish with everything that I do. And you ask Christy this because she's seen this side of me. It's mostly because I'm trying to get to another level of my life. And whenever I see like you know, a poor man or whatever on the side of the street asking for money, I don't even give them anymore. You know, I don't give it to them. What I do now though is I go to like donation spots and stuff like that, and I donate things that I don't need, like and I don't even take the stupid tax write-off, whatever. Like last year I donated like an old bedroom set that still worked, that was really nice. I donated a lot of furniture, and I didn't take the tax thing because I'm like, that's stupid, I don't care, I don't need that, I'm fine.
Yeah.
So I kind of figured that would help somebody out. Like those were nice dressers that I donated, but someone could easily get those for like $10 or $5 who really needs a dresser for like their sons or daughters or whoever. And now they can get it, you know.
Yeah.
I know it's not giving it for free, but I'm helping in that way. And I think to me that kind of brings about a bit more security in knowing that someone who wants it or needs it can get to it, rather than me giving this one random person $3 or $4, maybe not even knowing like that person could just be going and doing illicit things, you know.
Yeah.
But like I said though, that could have just been, it could be argued both ways, you know. And I do see the other perspective. Like this person could be genuinely asking for help, and I just denied him like his dinner.
Waste.
But at the end of the day, though, I have to look out, kind of like with you, with your daughter and your wife, right? I have to look out for myself, and now I have to look out for Christy and this stupid ass cat that I don't like. But,
I think the biggest problem when it comes to like everyone's going to have their like preconceived notions and whatnot. Everybody has it about everybody else, right? But I feel like we've shifted kind of more so on like I was saying on the selfish thing. We've shifted to a society of guilty until proven innocent, right?
yes.
Like, I'm going to assume you have bad intentions, so I'm not going to help you. Instead of
I'm guilty of that.
being like, I don't know what you're going to do with like the money, just using the homeless thing as an example. Like, I don't know what you're going to do with the money, but you've given me no reason to think that you're going to do something bad with it.
Yep.
So sure, you know? And, you know, if you're homeless and you want to drink, I mean, what of it? You know what I mean? It's also kind of like that, like, yeah, sure, you should try to like not be homeless anymore. But do you know how much money you'd have to give to somebody for them to not be homeless anymore? And they're expected to not eat, to not have a drink, or to not do anything until they saved up enough money to not be homeless? Like, I mean, I don't make a lot of money, but I struggle to save.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine, you know, being homeless and having to save enough money to get to a position that I could say, okay, maybe I won't be homeless anymore. Because I mean, like, I think that's I feel like a lot of it boils down to, I've always said this, the majority of society's problems are self-inflicted. Like, almost all of them are self-inflicted. Like, when it comes to like, and a lot of that is like economy based, you know, because it's like, okay, well, this homeless person, you know, to go buy them some nice clothes, get them a shower, then go do a job interview. Okay, who's say they're going to get hired for that job, right? And then what are they going to do with the clothes? Because now they have to carry those clothes wherever they go if they don't get the job. And even if they do get the job, they're not guaranteed, they're not going to have enough money to move into a place immediately. So they're going to have to be homeless while working, while having to find a place to wash their clothes with the money they're not going to get for probably 2 weeks. And it's like, there's a lot of factors that go into this that people don't think about. You know, it's not just like, oh yeah, here's a suit, or like, here's some nice clothes, go to a job interview. boom, now that person's no longer homeless. I mean, hell, I just watched a crime documentary about a homeless guy who was killed, and he had a job and was working a job for like 3 or 4 years and was still homeless.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's not that easy to just say get a job. It's not that. I mean, and on top of that, like it's like a whole like I don't know if hypocritical's not the right word. I can't think of the word, but it's like, okay, you're gonna tell this homeless person to go get a job flipping burgers at McDonald's, but then people who flip burgers at McDonald's don't deserve a livable wage because that type of stuff is designed for college students who live at home with their parents. But this person who's homeless has to get a job that's probably going to be, you know, entry level, like flipping burgers, but they're not going to make enough to not be homeless anymore. So now it's like there's no progression of anything. Even if they were to get a job, they're going to have to get a job, likely. I mean, some of these homeless people could have degrees, but I would think it's okay to stay statistically. Most people, if you're homeless, don't have a degree, you know, or anything like that. So they're probably going to have to get a job flipping burgers. They're going to have to get a job in fast food or maybe retail. But again, there's all that stuff they have to pay for the food to sustain themselves. They're going to have to find places to wash their clothes. They're going to have to get more clothes because they probably can't show up to work in the same outfit every single day. And they're going to have to wash that outfit every single day. You know, even if they do every other day or every like 3 days, right? They still have to pay a laundromat to wash that because they don't have their own laundry. And it's just like, there's such disdain for homeless people, and it's like, it's not easy. It's not as simple as saying go get a job and then the problem is solved. It's just it's so crappy.
Yeah, a couple things. First off, accept the invite to the church chat.
Oh, my fault.
I just sent it. I just realized you were streaming and I decided to just do it.
Yeah, I've been streaming for an hour.
Yeah. I've actually changed my title of my stream. It's called Real World Discussions. And the name of the podcast, this video or stream is going to be, Is This a Podcast?
Is this a podcast?
That'd be a cool name for a podcast. Is this a podcast?
Yeah.
But anyway, to touch on the points that you said, there's a couple things.
Okay, I joined the share chat, but I don't think share chat's turned on.
There we go. Okay. But to continue on to what you're saying, right? There's a lot of things to unpack. It's interesting because you're very right when you said that society has become very selfish, and the disdain towards the homeless is unwarranted, right? I mean, I do understand that there are those bad apples, and because right now I'm the only ones I don't like. The homeless people that I don't like are the ones who have chosen to live the life that has led them there and consistently makes those decisions to keep them there. I have no issue with the people who are homeless or live out of their cars. That's actually a very common thing now, especially on the West Coast, California, Oregon, Washington. People don't even own homes or rent anymore. They just live out of their car and they make it work. But the people who try to get themselves out of that position, I wish I knew, or I wish I could identify between those who really want to get out of that position and give them the help that they need. Like, I've actually, if I had the opportunity to, and I've helped a lot of my friends get jobs in my industry because I have a huge network of people that I used to work with.
I just realized I have not been, sorry, the freaking YouTube quota ran out for StreamerBot, and I realized that I'm streaming to YouTube, but I have not been able to see YouTube chat at all.
That's it. But no, yeah, like I really wish I could de-identify, right, the ones who genuinely need the help and get them the help that they need. And like I said, I would try to hook them up with a job in my industry. Like, there are some positions like that they pay more than McDonald's, and they don't require a lot of experience or whatever, right? I wish I could do that, but the fact of the matter is that there are those people who just want to cheat the system. They want handouts, and those are the people that I can't come to my own sense to help because, again, they're making the decisions consistently to keep them in that predicament. And if they can't help themselves, no one can help them. It's like it comes back to that the idea, right? You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. And I'm a big proponent of that. So, like whenever like a homeless person is like you said, working McDonald's and all that, I'm all for it. Like I don't ever talk down on somebody if they work like a retail job or fast food. That shit's hard. Or like being a server or whatever. That shit is really fucking hard.
Yes.
Fortunately for me, even though I grew up very poor, my parents did enough to where I didn't have to do that. But I have a lot of friends who worked in retail and worked in those jobs, and they hated it. They tell me all the time, like, don't ever fucking do it. Fucking
Sucks.
Sucks. Yeah, and I can empathize for that, right? And I'm very lucky and glad that I didn't have to do that, but I understand how stressful that is. My ex-wife worked as a barista at Starbucks, and she hated that shit. You know, she wasn't paid a lot to. Did you leave the multi-chat?
Oh, I closed. God, I closed the window out of habit. Gosh dang it. Okay, I'm coming back.
No, you're good.
I always close the freaking window. See if I can just join this one again. Okay, I can.
I bet. At least restart it. You're good. Anyway, what was I saying? Yeah. So, yeah, I'll never talk down on somebody like working a job like that. Now, the one part I will disagree on was the pay, and the reason why I disagree on it is it's gonna come from an economic standpoint, and we're kind of seeing that now with the higher cost of living. And I know there's other, and I'm not an economist. I'm not a big proponent in taxes. I'm not a big proponent in inflation. I'm not an expert. So I'm just going off of the very little information that I know. I want to make that point very clear. But from what we've seen in the past is or actually right now, in California, Oregon, and Washington, those are the very popular states that have raised minimum wage to 15 an hour. When you do that, you also have to up the charge for a lot of other things, goods, services, increase in price, because if a lot of people are making minimum wage at 15 an hour, that has to come out of someone's pocket, right? And again, this could also be misconstrued as a corporation just being greedy. I don't know, but a good example. Let's use McDonald's for the sake of the argument, right?
Yeah.
McDonald's has to pay them more, so they're going to have to charge more, which is why it's funny because me and Christy went to McDonald's. She did McDonald's for the first time like a couple nights ago, and we ordered like 2 or 3 things. Back when I was in college, those 3 things would have cost me like $5. Now those 3 things that we ordered, $21, and I was like, what the fuck? Like, why the fuck is this shit 21? Why am I paying $21 at McDonald's? But then I realized people are being paid $15 an hour, right? And I'm not saying they don't deserve it. I'm saying is that when you from a personal standpoint, when you give someone that cushion, that type of job, there is really no incentive for them to try to get out of that and do something else that they want to do. They get comfortable. That's one aspect. Another aspect is it increases the cost of everything else. And when people complain that their Starbucks is more or their McDonald's is more, their Dunkin' Donuts is more, well, they're the very same people who are asking for the minimum wage to be raised. And I find that kind of funny because they don't understand the basics of economics. When people get paid more, the price of goods and everything else is going to increase too to compensate for that. Because again, like I said, that money isn't going to come out of thin air. It's going to come out of the corporation's pockets. And I'm not pro corporation. I mean, these fuckers make way more money than they need. Right?
I think that's the problem.
Yeah, I don't mind them pinning out more, but the problem is they're gonna offset that cost to the consumer, which is us, right?
The problem isn't inherently raising the minimum wage, but it's how the corporations are going to adjust to it, right? Because the corporations will talk about, raising the minimum wage, we're gonna have to raise our prices, people are gonna be unhappy. But then you go and you look at yearly earnings reports over the past 2 or 3 years, and they've doubled, tripled their profits. You know what I mean? So it's I don't think raising the minimum wage is the problem in a sense. I do think it's like a band-aid solution, because I don't think it's going to solve the inherent problem, because it's going to cause more problems again with prices raising and everything. There is definitely corporate price gouging and shit like that happening. And that stuff has to stop. But I remember talking to my uncle about this. Freaking great dude. I love my uncle. He's so smart. He actually ran for city council where I live years ago. He's always been kind of deep into like the political side of things and and whatnot. But him and I had a very short, small discussion about economics and raising the price, because I was like, well, I think people, who work a job should be able to afford to live in an apartment, nothing fancy, but they should be able to live, like that. If you're working, because what's the point of working if you're not able to sustain yourself? You know what I mean? There's no point. I'm working and I'm still not able to sustain myself. This is pointless. But he told me that basically the gist of it, from what I can remember, is that you have to completely fix the way the money works. If you were to do that, you have to fix the American dollar. Was kind of the gist of, if I'm remembering correctly, was kind of the gist of what he was saying. Because it was a lot of the same topics. That's like raising the minimum wage. Corporations aren't going to eat that. They're going to pass that on to consumers, and the consumers are going to have to pay that wage difference. Even if it's not going to be like a small wage difference, like, shoot, we used to go to Taco Bell and I'd be able to get, a good decent amount of food for $5, and now it's like a single burrito's $5.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And it's all, I think a lot of it is corporate price gouging. If I'm not misunderstanding what I've read, that like, I don't think inflation has anything to do with it. At least I'm talking like nowadays, right? Because we're back to pre-pandemic inflation levels, yet prices haven't changed or gone back down. So, is it inflation? No, there's definitely some corporate price gouging and corporate greed there. Which sucks, because it's like, how do you fix that? I know how you can fix it, but I feel like the people who can fix it aren't going to fix it. So
No, they're not.
it's just like, and then it goes back to the whole, like, homeless people are going to stay homeless because this is just going to get worse, and it's just going to be, it really just sucks all around. It just sucks. I'm far from homeless. But even my wife and I, even with dual income, we look at prices and we're all like, this is fucking stupid. Like, we make dual income. I mean, my wife is a scrub tech at a hospital, she makes decent money. I make decent money. I'm far from rich, mind you. I'm not saying I'm a fucking millionaire. Trust me, I would not have a background like this, having a dingy basement, if I was a millionaire. But
you have the means to be comfortable. Yeah.
Yes, there are instances and cases we do still live paycheck to paycheck, but that's mostly to do with childcare and whatnot. But if it was just my wife and I, we would be really comfortable. We would be very comfortable. But even we struggle sometimes, and housing is crazy too. Like, we rent right now, and our landlord had to raise our rent for this lease. He had to raise our rent $100, and then he's been fighting. I actually need to message him now I think about it. He's been fighting because now, like, the county's trying to say that this house is valued at like $40,000 more than it was last year, which means he'd probably have to raise our rent again quite a bit. And he's been fighting with them about that. But it's just like, it's ridiculous. Everything's going up. And I'm just like, shoot. I mean, from my last job, which was contract, and it fell through, I took a small pay cut getting my new one, and prices are going up.
Yeah.
It just sucks. But I mean, and it also sucks because, like, I want to help people, right? Like, I see people who are homeless, and I want to give them the benefit of the doubt. I want to say, hey, I don't have much. Here's a couple bucks, But it's also like, okay, yeah, but what if I need to go get something now? And that couple dollars is the last couple dollars I have. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's like, we've only just been able, granted, we just paid for a wedding, but we've only just been able to start building a savings. And even then, it's like something always comes up. Like I feel like there's always something. Every time I'm like, okay, cool, we're comfortable, we got a savings, boom, something happens. I got to replace a tire. Something goes wrong with the fridge. The appliance breaks. Like something goes wrong, and then we're back to square one. And it's like you can't. People in this economy and stuff. It's like, you need to save. You need to live within your means or whatever. But it's like even if we do save, we can't save at an extent that is comfortable enough to cover the things that might happen and still be able to have a savings. And it's like, and that's coming from, like I said, a dual income household, where we make decent money, we make, above average pay. Actually, I think we make about average pay, but we make above minimum wage, quite a bit above minimum wage pay. It's just like, I can't imagine being in a position where you only have a one income household with a kid or two. It's crazy, man. And it sucks because I want to be able to help people, but it's like I don't know how to, without suddenly becoming a millionaire and then being like, here you go. You get a car. You get a car.
Pull off I don't know if you've seen the movie Mr. Deeds, but at the very end, when he gets like $1 billion, he buys everyone in his town Ferraris.
Oh, man.
No, yeah, I totally share that sentiment. Like, and again, like, I do this every now and then, and it's probably gonna be bad karma. I mean, for talking about it, but whenever I'm out and about, and I see like people raising money for something, and I never tell them my name, like I never do it, but like there are random times where I'll just donate like $50, $100, to random like charities and stuff, right? And I mean, I know that's not a lot. Like I know that people expect to get like 1,000 or whatever. I'm like, shit, I'm very fortunate. For my situation, I'm very fortunate. I don't own a house yet, but I'm working on it, right? But I'm very fortunate to make the money that I do. But like I set myself up at this moment in time to be able to do that every now and then because I do want to help, but at the same time though, like I said, now that I'm getting a little older, I've realized that I have to look out for my own. Like I said this before, right? And I don't think there's anything wrong with being selfish, and for that reason, right? You're not being selfish, you're just looking out for your own. And I think we got to stop calling that being selfish. We got to start calling that like financially intelligent.
Oh yeah, for sure.
There's no other way to put it.
There is definitely a difference between being like selfish and then looking out for, your family, because everyone's going to put their family first. Everyone's going to prioritize their own family, and stuff like that. But I think it's a fine line. I think there's a fine line between, being selfish and supporting and being, putting your family first. You know what I mean?
Right.
And but also, who am I to say where that line is? I know where that line could be for me. It's all different. I just feel like at the end of the day, we are all kind of just we're all in one society. You know what I mean? We live in a society, and we should all look out for each other. And it sucks because you have other people who I don't know. It feels like there are people who say that, but don't act on that. Yeah. If that makes sense. Yeah. But I don't know. If I had the ability to like end world hunger, and shit like that, I'd do it in a heartbeat. You know what I mean? Like, and this is something I've talked about to my wife and all. Is it's like, if for some reason I was to become like a massive streamer, right? Just a big Twitch streamer, or not even like super big, not even like XQC big, or freaking Kai Cenat big, that queso. Queso sounds good. I could actually go for some chips and some queso. Anyway, that would be ironic that his name would, make me think of chips. But anyway, it's like, even if I was that big where I was making like a good amount of money, like I look back, like I only recently actually saw like Mizkif's clip from like 2 years ago where he accidentally shared his revenue on stream, and then he made a video about it. And it was I think it was like $10,000 for a week. And yeah, and he was talking about how he actually made a video about it because he was like, "Oh, it's out there now, so I might as well just talk about it." And he's like, "This was for a short week." He goes, "This was for a week where I didn't stream as often as I usually do." And then he explained that a lot of that's ad revenue and whatnot, but that's beside the point. The point is, if I was to ever like get to that point, where I am making more than enough money that I feel I need, because I always tell my wife, I don't need to be a millionaire. I don't need to be. I don't want to be. You know, I don't want to have so much money I don't know what to do with it. You know what I mean? I want to have enough money to live comfortably, to be able to pay outright for my daughter's school. I want to be able to pay for her wedding if she ever decides to get married. You know, I want to be able to help out family if shit hits the fan. Stuff like that. But I don't need to be a freaking multi-millionaire. But one thing that I've always told myself, and that I would hope that I would hold myself to, and this is where I have full faith in my wife to actually hold me to it, is if I ever was a millionaire and I just made that ridiculous amount of money, I'm only giving myself and my family enough to live. It sounds like a lot, like to say that I would give me and my family like 300,000 a year. Like that's our income, and the rest of that would get donated. It would get it would get reinvested if I was to start like a company, or I'm writing if I decided I wanted to start a publishing company, or something like that. It would get reinvested back into the content, and whatnot. But like I think, of course, times will change if that ever happens. By the time that does happen, I'm sure the economy will be way different. But I feel like that's all that I would need, and I don't feel like I don't need that much money. I don't need it. Like, it just seems like outrageous to me to have so much money that you have a yacht for every day of the week is just ridiculous to me. But then again, okay, this is gonna. I think I'm kind of derailing, but it's also building into other topics.
It's okay.
It's all like economy based or whatnot. But again, if you are a millionaire, you have to spend that money. And this is the problem. And I've talked to my wife about this too. You have these millionaires that live very humbly, right? I don't know if it's Adam Sandler or another one. I know Adam Sandler lives pretty humbly. But there's another one who like drives like a 1990 Civic, and he's like a millionaire. Dave Grohl's another example that he just has all this money, but he doesn't spend it or live like it. But the problem,
Warren Buffett, I think, is another one.
maybe, I don't know. But the problem with that is that there's a finite amount of money, and if you have millionaires that are not spending the money, it's not going into the economy. It's not recirculating,
Yeah.
which I feel adds on quite a bit to a lot of the economic issues that we have. You know what I mean? So it's like, you talk shit on these millionaires for having 8 yachts and whatnot, but at the same time, if they're making that kind of money, they also need to spend it to help the economy. You know what I mean? And sure, I could debate all day that they don't need to buy 8 fucking yachts. They could donate, a ton of money, and that would be awesome. But the fact of the matter is that you have to spend that money. Like, it's just, you can't be like a dragon hoarding gold. Because it doesn't help anything. It doesn't help anybody or anything. But anyway, that was kind of a side tangent thing on the whole topic. But anyway,
No, those are good points, and um, another good example of a very rich man. I think he's a billionaire actually. Is Warren Buffett. He owns one of the biggest investment firms in the world, Berkshire Hathaway, and
I've heard of him. I don't know much about him, but I have heard of him.
but he's the definition of doesn't spend his money. He drives the same 1983 Mercedes Benz he's had since like the 80s. It's paid off. He lives in the same house he lived in before he got rich, which is like in the suburbs of like I don't know what state it is, of the Eastern Coast or whatever. But like the house was like when he first bought it was like 50,000. I mean, yeah, with inflation now it's like 300,000. But like for a billionaire to live in a suburban home like that, because he believes in the idea of not spending on things you don't need, right? He's like the
Yeah.
epitome of a minimalist, I guess, in his version, right?
Yeah.
And but the interesting thing about him though is that he invested a lot of it back into the investment company Berkshire Hathaway. But anyway, that's to break off to another topic, or I guess another point. Is that they're like the thing that these rich people spend on, and I find this kind of annoying. And after I've realized how it really works, like if you've noticed, like a lot of like rich people, like millionaires, billionaires, they buy like pieces of art, right? Paintings,
Yeah.
statues, whatever the fuck. They buy these for like tens of millions of dollars, like this one random painting. But I found out is that there's actually like a group of curators that if you're very wealthy, you know these people. And the only reason I know about this is because one of the doctors that I used to work for, he had a house party. And what's really cool is that this guy actually had one of the paintings, a painting, two paintings. One that was painted by Adolf Hitler, believe it or not.
Huh.
He actually has one of his paintings. So I actually saw in person a painting that Hitler painted. It was in front of me, and I was like,
That's kind of wild.
yeah, kind of wild. But that painting was like, I don't know, like $50 million, right? Anyway, he was telling me that he was going to donate it to the museum of whatever. I forgot which museum it was, one of the local ones here where I live. And the reason he told me was because this painting, he told me that this painting is intrinsically worthless. But the curator that I'm working with is going to make it so that they quote unquote purchased it for 50 million or evaluated at 50 million. And if he donates it to the museum, he can then use that $50 million as a tax write-off, right?
Huh.
So basically, he kind of explained it that way, and he said that, George, half the paintings that you see in museums, they're not worth the amount that they say that they are. They're only that price because of this group of curators have agreed upon that value of that piece. And there's a lot of pieces of art that are paintings that are made by like these no-name painters, but because they had the right connections, they got with that curator group, they evaluated it at like $10 million, even though this person's a no-name. But because these curators say it's 10 million, it's going to be valued at 10 million. And then a millionaire is going to come out, or a multi-millionaire is going to come and buy it. And then he's going to go to another curator of that group. They're going to evaluate even higher. And now it's 30 million. He's going to donate it to another museum and give it away for a quote unquote $30 million piece, and then have that $30 million as a tax write-off. So they can offset their taxes. Because when you make a lot of money and you're in that tax bracket, you owe a lot of taxes. So you try to find ways to minimize your tax burden. And this is just one of the shifty ways that they do it. But yeah, the doctor that I was talking about, he kind of explained that to me, and it blew my mind. I found this out like years ago, like 8-9 years ago. But it's interesting, right? Because when you talk about how like these millionaires, billionaires have like I guess like not an assignment, but a duty to spend the money that they make. It's a little because I agree with you. I think that when you make that much money, you should inject it into the economy to kind of not revitalize, but kind of help it move along. That way there is like, a cash flow going through the economy, and, developing, I guess, jobs or benefits to people who need the money or whatever.
Yeah.
But it sucks because of things like that, like the whole curator museum bullshit, right? When paintings, these people like pretend like these things are worth X amount of dollars, but in reality they're not. And because they're not paying into their taxes, their money stays with them. They're not going to putting money back into the circulation of the economy because they're not paying their taxes.
Yep.
I think that's something that should be looked at, and it's a very common trope, right? A lot of people are like, tax the rich, yada yada. I'm a very moderate on that, because yes, we should tax the rich, but we should, instead of taxing them, I think we should regulate how we tax the rich. I think what a great way to start with that would be getting rid of that whole bullshit curating paint shit, because that's just a fucking scam in its hate and its entire process. That's basically what it is.
I have
con artist, no pun intended.
Yeah, I have a hot take, and I know
Fucking Otter.
Otter. Hey Otter, I have a hot take, and I've brought this up with other people, and they've told me I'm out of my fucking mind. And you will probably tell me the same thing. But and again, I have no schooling. I have no when it comes to like economy or anything like that. I have very minimal knowledge. Okay, it's just when I hear something, I try to research it, and that's basically what I get. And I look at reputable sources, and I look at multiple sources, not just one that tells me what I want to believe. Anyway, so I'm curious, and part of me wants to see that it will never fucking happen. Never on God's green earth will this ever happen, at least not in the US. A wage cap. A max amount of money that an individual is allowed to make. Bring home. Like, they can make more if they own a business, but they can only profit a cap. And the rest of that money has to be reinvested into the business, donated, or something else. What the cap would be, would I'd know anything about that. But I would be curious. Wage cap, well, yeah, it probably would never work. But it's just an interesting idea, I think, to have a wage cap. And I've heard the arguments that, like, well, if there's a wage cap, there's no reason to innovate. There's no reason to, be better, because there's nothing. Once you hit that cap, then there's nothing else for you to do, right? But then, I don't know. I definitely don't think I definitely don't think it's the best idea, and I think it's one of those things that's like, oh man, this looks awesome on paper, and then in practice is going to be an absolute shit show. But I think it's a curious idea, just like a noggin jogger, as my child's school would call it.
That's an interesting topic. You're actually the first person where I've heard about a wage cap. I've never heard anyone ever talk to me about a wage cap. Maybe in passing, but I just don't remember. But that's an interesting idea. But there's a couple things. I don't think it's a crazy idea. And I kind of am leaning towards what Otter said, that it will never work. But the idea in itself is not a bad idea, but it's just execution. Like, how would you execute that? And also the question would be, right, would the government mandate that? And in essence, at the same time, would that be an overstep of the government involvement into an individual's life? Because now you're stepping away. When you do something like that, you're stepping away from free enterprise or like the free market. And then you're becoming more, I wouldn't say communistic, but more totalitarianistic, if I'm being completely honest.
It's actually what
Wolf, there is a
What-
180-second ad starting. Please pause the game if possible, so those with ads don't miss anything.
We then control what you do with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and Otter actually mentioned that, and he said, to be blunt, it's kind of like communism. On the surface, it's great if everyone can agree and get along, but always ends up a shit show in practice. And that goes back to my whole point that if everyone can agree, that goes back to my whole point that the majority of our problems are society-based and self-inflicted, because people can't agree on things, because people always want more. Like, I feel like a lot of people set these goals for themselves, and then they reach them, and they're like, oh man, I can do this, I can do more. And then it gets to a point where it's like it's just this never ending, want for more and more. So I definitely don't think it would work. It will never work in America. I do not ever believe that something like that, where everyone in America has to agree, would ever work. There's just too many differing views, too many differing ideologies and stuff. But that will never work in America. But again, I think it's a good thought experiment to think about and to talk about. And another, sorry, I kind of don't mean to talk over you, but
You're good.
another interesting thing, and God, please, internet, if this, for some reason, this gets brought up like 10 years later, this is a thought experiment. I'm thinking, okay, I'm no, economist, or I don't understand how a lot of these things might work or might function. But people bring up communism, right? Like, and on the surface, communism, I don't entirely understand communism. But it people love to talk about communism as just this horrible, absolutely horrible thing. Like you never want to do communism. It's so bad. Same thing with socialism. It's so bad. It's the worst thing ever. And blah blah blah. And I look at places. I think this is going to be a trigger word for today's society, but I look at places like China, and I look at the way that everything kind of is. And I'm not talking government wise, but China, from my understanding, is a communist society. I mean, am I wrong? Okay, so
it's like a mix though. They're not strictly communist, but they have a lot of communistic beliefs. Yeah.
gotcha. Okay, so my understanding is that, well, not my understanding, but just from what I've seen when TikTok was down and I switched over to the other app.
Lemon.
No. Oh God, I cannot think of the name now. But it was the Chinese TikTok anyway. But anyway,
OnlyFans, got it.
what? No, anyway. But like I was watching there and I was seeing all these different people's takes and whatnot on like their culture and seeing the way that these people live, and they were talking about how cheap a lot of their stuff is, like how cheap their cars are, and their cars are like really advanced for the price that they are. And they're talking about all this stuff that's really great. And I know there's more to the story. I personally don't think any type of one system works. I don't think an entirely capitalistic system works. I don't think an entirely communist system works. I feel like in order to have a functional society, economy wise, you have to have a mixture of both. I think there are socialist aspects that would work. Let me rephrase it. I think there are aspects of society and like life where socialism would be good implemented, but not in everything. For instance, I firmly believe that you should not be able to buy a second home, unless it's to rent out or to use as a thing, unless everybody has a home. I think everybody deserves a home, right? I think everybody deserves a home at the bare minimum. It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be like super fancy. You know what I mean? It could be like a 2-bedroom. Yes, like that's fine. But I think everybody deserves a home. I think everybody should be able to have a home. And part of the problem is you got all these companies and stuff that buy up all these houses, and then there's no homes for all these other people, and the housing market goes crazy, and they're putting all these houses up for rent, charging outrageous rates, and then you got the Airbnb issue, and it's like, if you want to have a second home, fine, but you're going to pay double the taxes on that second home. You know what I mean? Or some kind of way to combat that. Sweden, Austria, some of the Nordic countries are basically what you're describing. Yes,
yeah,
actually,
yeah.
Norway is where we're looking at, because Norway has God, I cannot pronounce it. But Norway actually, they have a slogan that's basically their entire cultural beliefs is that no one person is above society. That's the TLDR of it. Society always comes first before the individual, and I love that.
Yeah,
and that's why Norway is one of the big places that we've been looking at for moving, if we can ever afford it, and now there's all kinds of other stuff that like I'm not going to get into all that stuff here, but there's all kinds of stuff happening that we might not even be able to leave the country. There's all kinds of crap happening, and it's just it's so scary. Sadly, one of the hardest places to immigrate to, for sure. And that's why my wife is looking at going back to school, because she wants to try to get a transferable skill into something that medical that they really need, or get a position into a medical position here, where she makes really good money, and that we could be, quote, safe. But hey, Rabbit.
I totally understand that.
But yeah.
It's funny that you brought up Norway. It's this is something that I've been wanting to do for years. And it was a plan with my ex-wife, but I've talked to Christy about it, and she's actually on board with doing it. I actually eventually, like in the next like 20, 30 years, no matter where I'm at in life, and I'm actually saving toward it now, I do plan on moving to Scotland, and I want to.
That'd be cool.
And it's not because of any like political or like ideological reason. It's just because I don't know why I've always had like an affinity to Scotland. I mean, I'm also a big proponent of Scotch whiskey, so it kind of works out. But I like the culture. I love the architecture there. I love the history behind Scotland, and I don't know. I just think Scotland's one of the most beautiful places in the country, or in that country, in the world. You know.
Yeah.
And oh, you meant now? Yeah, babe, we're doing it now. Hi, babe. And it's not because I hate America. I want to make that very clear. And yeah, no, I agree.
Oh, the healthcare. Oh, that's a whole nother discussion.
Yeah, let's talk about that the next time. But because that can be a whole ass thing on its own. But anyway, but the main reasons why I want to do that is just because mainly I've never traveled outside the country. Like I've never been, and I want to do that. But like, no one in my family has ever lived outside of the United States, and for me, like, I just thought that'd be freaking cool, you know, and that's the real reason is because I just want to do it. It's not because of a specific type of community or country or whatever. It's just because I want to, because it's cool, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, back to the points you were talking about earlier with the whole wage cap thing, right? The big thing about America, and I think this is very popular in America only, and I could be wrong, is that America is a very big proponent of individualistic liberty and freedom. They don't like kind of like it's a counter, the opposite of what you said, right? Was like Sweden is all about having an individual above society. Right?
You're good, Otter.
Oh, wait, not the opposite. It's the individual's never above society, right?
Yeah.
But in America, it's the opposite. It's individualistic over, groups or society. And I agree. Like wage caps is according to I feel like it would violate some type of constitution. I'm not a big history buffer, right? I don't read the fucking Constitution, the Bill of Rights or whatever, but I'm sure it would violate something within that Constitution, like the right to pursue liberty and whatever the shit like that.
Yeah.
That's the issue that would occur. Now, I don't think that's a crazy idea. I just think execution of the idea would be very difficult to find a middle ground for all parties involved, which means everybody, everyone who lives in that country. And I do think, similar to what Otter said about how communism can work at a micro, not at a macro level, wage cap, I think, falls under that context as well, just because you have a lot of, the more people you have, the more chances you'll have a competitive individual who will be like, no, I don't want a wage cap. Like, you're going to limit me to make this amount of money. And and again, that person is driven by income or financial means entirely. They're never, like you said, they're not gonna progress in whatever they want to do. That being said, though, I think that logic also is at the same time flawed. And the reason is because I know, again, this is going to be a personal experience, but I know a lot of people, a lot of scientists and researchers who do the work that they do, not because they get paid. They don't even get paid a lot. A lot of academic researchers, a lot of people I used to do studies with back when I was in college, academic research get paid little to nothing. But because of their academic research, they progress society more because they are the ones doing the dirty work of testing out new combination drugs to treat certain indications and certain illnesses. And they do that because they love that, So I think that logic might be a little bit flawed. Like wage cap would work in that sense because not everyone's doing it what they do for money, right? Yes, it's a big proponent of why they do it because they need to, live. But
yeah.
There are a lot, but you can't rule out those individuals who do the jobs that they do because they genuinely enjoy it. They want to provide an impact to society in that way or whatever. And the same can be said for any other profession, right? Blue collar work, white collar work, doesn't matter. Like if it benefits society and they love doing it, they're not doing it for the money. They're doing it because they just genuinely like it. But anyway, I just wanted to make that point. But a wage cap, I don't think it's a crazy. I don't think you're crazy for thinking that. I think it's crazy to think that that's a crazy idea. I just I don't see it working in America with the current state of where it's at now.
Yeah,
because of the whole individualistic ideal,
Yeah, there would definitely be some there would be some pushback from society on it. I feel like a lot of, and yeah, but I also think there would be like limits. So like in my brain, I'm thinking wage caps for the individuals. Like obviously you can't wage cap a corporation, right? because if you wage cap like a corporation, it's going to be you just can't do that because we have to import things from other countries and they're going to charge and they don't give a shit about our wage caps. You know what I mean? So it would definitely be specifically for an individual, right?
Right.
But like you said, there would be a lot of pushback. And there are a lot of people who do what they do because they love it, because they enjoy what they do. You know,
Yep.
I would just be really curious to talk to like an economist, somebody who actually has a background in it, and be all like, what would happen? Like theoretically, if we were to implement a wage cap, whatever that wage cap would be, what would happen to the economy? Like where could like prices be? Because obviously prices would then, I think prices would stagnate, to an extent, because there would be no reason to adjust pricing at all. You know what I mean? Because everything would be within a set amount. So, cars would be a specific price, and you would still have cars that are more expensive than others based on features and whatnot. Because again, it's just the individual, not the company. So it goes back into like a CEO wouldn't be able to buy 8 yachts because their wage would be capped. But the company that they own would still have all of that money invested into the company. So they could still innovate. They could still make money, to continue the innovation. But at what point does the CEO or whatever just say, yeah, I'm not making any more money, so who cares about innovation? You know what I mean? And it's just like you said, there are some people, but it's just I don't know the ratio of people who do what they do because they love it and they enjoy it, and the people who only do what they do because they're making good money from it. And God, what would that do to investments? Oh man, because there would be no. I don't know if prices would fluctuate on investments. Like I said, it's just a good thought provoking question.
So what's really funny is I looked this up and actually I wanted to make sure I didn't misquote it. But last year there was a bill that was introduced to the Senate. I think it's the Senate or the House. I forget. It was called the Salary Cap Act, which is basically a wage cap, right? And the basis of the bill. It's not law because I don't think it passed, but the basis of the bill was to curb excessive salaries, particularly in the public sector, for social equity and environmental health reasons. So they were basically gonna do what you said, wage cap people, and it focused on setting salary caps and enforcing them, along with addressing the pay for self-employed workers. Separately, there are discussions and proposals regarding minimum wage increases that would be affected by the Salary Wage Cap Act. But yeah, it's basically the idea that what you said, but it was specifically targeting the public sector, so it wouldn't affect government work. So basically, if that let's say for a thought experiment, right? This act passed, and me and you started a company. We started making a very successful company. We started making millions of dollars, but because of this act, this cap, we can't take that money. We have to use that money for the business or something else or whatever, to stimulate the economy. But if the government workers, the government employees, are immune to that bill, so they could still make exorbitant salaries and not be affected by it. Um, but there was something. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I was right. That's why I looked it up really quick. But
Oh,
there
I
was
mean,
something like that was proposed, but it just never passed.
of course, you can't affect the government. You can't affect the government employees because the senators need to make they need to raise their salary in 100,000 to fall asleep at hearings. That's a lot of work.
Yeah.
So just oh man, you want to fix the economy? That's where you need to start. Rip out the freaking government workers' silk lined pockets.
Drain the swamp is what they say.
That's ridiculous.
No, yeah, we can talk about the government and how corrupt that shit is, and it's funny because when I talk about people like this, right? Like, I understand the disdain towards America. I really do, right? With a lot of the issues that it has, but I tend to like America. I tend to like a lot of the ideas behind what America should be. You know, it's like that phrase, right? It's the melting pot of multiple cultures and ideas.
That's what it was
the fact
supposed
that
to
we're
be.
able to, yeah, exactly. Like I don't like the current state of America where it is now, but I like the idea behind of what it should be. And I try to make that point very clear. But every time I say that, people attack me and say, "Oh, you must be a conservative. You must like Trump and all that." I'm like, no, I don't like Trump, but he's
Yeah.
our president, so just that's the reality. He's our president. I'm not trying to be emotional about it. That's just being pragmatic. As same as with the whole idea that people say that America is the greatest country in the world. I mean, it's a great country. I wouldn't say it's the greatest, but I think um, the idea behind America is what we really need to go back to, right? Being giving people the freedom to do or the freedom to say what they want within reason, right?
Yeah.
But like, I don't know, the ideals of America are something that I think more countries should have. Individualistic freedoms and liberty to just pursue whatever you want to do, um, and to kind of have that freedom to really develop things that can push you through, or not push you through, that can really embody who you are as an individual. And individual expression is something that I think is really cool. And diving back into whole China, censorship is a big bad in China.
Right? Oh yeah. America, censorship's horrible.
Yeah, and I wanted to bring that point up earlier, but this kind of like was a perfect segue to it. In America, there's no such thing as censorship. Although there was that one thing that passed, that was, I don't know why it was. At least from my perspective, I don't see why it was controversial. But it was the Take It Down Act. Did you hear about that?
I did not. Now, when you say censorship, are you specifically talking? You were specifically talking about like government censorship, like we're allowed to say what we want against the government.
Censorship, yeah.
Gotcha.
Right. Yeah.
It's like because private companies can do whatever the hell they want.
But like, we can say that the government sucks, right?
Yeah.
Any repercussion? Like I can sit here and on my stream say, "Hey, America, government, you suck." Trump, you suck.
We can say Trump looks like an Oompa Loompa, but you can't say that the Chinese president looks like
rabbit otter. Exactly. Like if we were in China right now, I wouldn't be able to make fun of like I don't know what they are, like the minister or whatever the fuck. We couldn't insult them. Or another example is like North Korea. We couldn't make fun of Kim Jong-un or whatever, right? Well, no, yeah, rabbit otter. That's what we're talking. That's why we're.
Oh yeah, within reason.
We're defining it, within reason. We're defining it as that's what we're doing now. Is that we can say our president sucks. We have the right to say that. We can go up to a cop and you can flick off a cop, right? And because you have the freedom to do that. Although the cop is just corrupt, he'll just fucking hit you. That's your problem. But you have the freedom to do that. You could go up to the cop's face and say, "You suck. You're a piece of shit," and flick him off and then run away. You can do that. If you do that in like China or Russia or any other country, you're gonna get your ass kicked. You're gonna get your ass beaten, thrown in jail because you have that expression of freedom or whatever. But that's the censorship we're talking about.
Censorship is often done within propaganda. I definitely do think there is some censorship, but when you compare the censorship, from America with like China, there's it's
yeah, no, I know.
Yeah.
No, but that's why we were defining it. That could be true, and that's not at all what we're saying. But anyway, back to what I was trying to say about the whole differences and everything. But yeah, I understand like your point before, like how China has like technological advances and this and that. But the problem is also the downsides of those countries, and one of them is governmental censorship. You don't have that freedom that you do in America to say our leaders are shit, right? Because you do that in China, you're going to get locked up.
I remember actually
other things like that.
Yeah, sorry, I don't mean to catch up.
You're good. Go for it.
But I actually remember seeing a video on that. I cannot remember the name of that app, and I feel so bad because it's actually really cool. It was really interesting to see, actual like Chinese culture and stuff like that, from their normal everyday citizens. But there was someone was talking about the oh my god, I just lost my train of thought. What were we just talking about? Hello?
I'm listening.
Oh, what were we just talking about? Because I just lost my train of thought.
Talking about censorship and like you're talking about China and its cultures and its people, and then you kind of just stopped.
Oh yeah. Okay, I remember now. Okay, so so somebody was talking about how oftentimes American, specifically, not just Americans, but they tend to be the most likely to judge China, and how they always talk about China's censorship when it comes to the government, that Chinese people can't talk bad about their government or their president or anything like that. And I remember watching this guy, and this person was like, "That is true," and he was like, "But." When you live to a lot of Chinese citizens, he said that to a lot of Chinese citizens, when you live as good as you do, there's no reason to talk bad about the government. And so it was a because at first, when I was first talking or hearing about the difference between America and China, and they're like whatchamacallit, censorship and everything, and then he said that, and I was like, that is a very interesting like comment, because one thing I've always said, and this is probably going to ruffle feathers, I probably won't ruffle feathers, but I'm gonna have a lot of people maybe say that I'm dumb for it. I have always said that if it came down to it, I have no problem bending my knee to a just king or queen, right? Like, I don't have a problem with that. You right? Like, if you are taking care of the people are comfortable and everything like that, that's fine. It's whatever. But obviously there's a lot of nuance to that. But and so it's like it was a good thought for to hear a Chinese citizen say that yes, there's censorship. You can't say bad things about the government, but the government is making our lives comfortable, so there's no reason to. And it was just like a weird. It was just like a huh kind of moment, like you never really thought about that. Like, would you talk bad about a government that you were comfortable living in because they made your life comfortable and they made sure that you were taken care of, that your family was taken care of, that you could afford all the fancy things that you want? You know what I mean? And it's just kind of like, it was just an interesting thing. Also, hi, Bake.
What's up, Bake? Yeah, that's a
You peed in a OMD. I just peed in a taxi.
So she's in Washington, and they have like this ferry that goes from Seattle to wherever the heck she has to go. And there's two ferries. One's really slow that takes about an hour to get there, and another one's that's really fast. It takes you 30 minutes to get to where you need to go. She's on the fast one, and I've never been on the fast one, but the other slow one, quote unquote, is actually kind of fucking fast. And so she's on this faster one, and she tried peeing in the toilet there, and I can imagine like just her just going back and forth like that. So it's harder for us guys because we gotta stand.
Yeah.
So you can imagine.
Oh shit! Peeing on everything.
Those bathrooms are nasty, dude. I remember having to take a piss on that slow ferry, but there was like piss every fucking where, and it's like,
oh man,
like why? Like, I mean, it was bad, right? But I mean, I was still get it all in the toilet. It's like, are people just like stupid here?
men are gross.
Yeah, men are gross. Yeah, I won't argue that. But back to the thing. To expand, hold on. To expand, censure usually isn't outright. You cannot say this. Usually gets censored in the form of information overload or straight up spamming multiple versions of the story until it's impossible to know it's real and you give up. Yeah, and it's fun. Okay, so this is gonna you feel nauseous, babe, or relax.
Skill issue.
This is something that I wanted to reiterate. This might be a little off a little tangent, but I listen to Tech Tone. I kind of listen to his content, and he's very controversial. I'm not gonna say he isn't. But one of the things that I get so annoyed of is, and he made a comment on this. He's like, people have lost the ability to formulate their own thoughts and opinions, and instead get a TLDR from a content creator who is in their own right biased on their own beliefs and ideas.
Oh my god, I deal with this.
Yeah, people will base that off as the truth, and it won't be because that's not the original source of the information. So basically, yeah, Otter, what you're saying, yeah, is that's happening, but it's happening to more people than people think. Like, people think that, oh, I get my information from this and that and so. Like this company claims to be non-biased. This company claims to do all that. I hate to break it to you, everyone's got a bias. Every single person has a bias, whether you want to agree with that or not. Everyone is a human being with their own emotional baggage, their own emotional idealism, and they have their own, I guess you want to call it, agendas or whatever. No one is truly unbiased. No one is. everyone's got a bias, whether you want to agree with that or not. So that's why it's very hard to find unedited, raw information nowadays. And I agree with that, you know. And like I said, Tecton made a very good point. He even said to his followers, like, yeah, don't even listen to me. Like, look up this stuff yourself. Like, try to find, you know, information you can that's not biased or whatever the case may be. But it's just really hard because, like Otter said, it's just people keep spamming out multiple versions of the same shit.
Grounded news.
And yeah, that is just doctrinated in a certain way or doctored in a certain way. This fucker can fuck off, ruin hilarity. I just hate every single aspect of your existence, and I hope that you one day
you ruined my hilarity, you asshole.
No, all I'm gonna say is that person, you're the reason why your father drinks. You're the reason why your mother hates her life.
That's wild.
You know that you're the reason why we suffer in this world. Anyway, continuing on. It all boils down to really trying to take the extra step to learn, but we're at a state in the world where people just don't want to take that extra step of typing into Google and look, or not, or Google, or whatever search engine you want, because that's another thing, right? And trying to find what exactly happened. And it's another level of laziness, right? So people are so easy to just go onto YouTube instead, look up their favorite content creator, and to take what they say as face value when you really shouldn't be doing that. I don't care who you listen to. I don't care how good of a person that they are. They're going to give you a different opinion of what they think happened. And
yeah.
The fact that people will take that opinion as fact, that's where the problem lies. And that's with anybody, including me, including Wolf, or anybody else who's a content creator, whatever. It could also be information overload. That could be an argument too. I just fall in line more with the laziness aspect of like, why would I go and search for it when I have my favorite content creator, George 2D, tell me exactly what I want to hear? You know?
Yeah.
So that's just the way I look at it.
And
there's like no right or wrong answer here.
Yeah, and what I said earlier was the genuine a genuine comment was I found Grounded News. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. But I
have heard a little bit of them, but I don't know a lot of them. So if you
I actually so Grounded News, they basically take all these different news articles and let's see if I can.
That's true, Rabbit. Yeah,
pull it up.
Also true.
Ground News, my fault. Ground News, not Grounded News. Ground News. But they take these different news articles and they will basically give you an idea of it tells you, like this one here. This is Trump says Samsung, other phone makers could be hit with tariffs. This tells you it's got 56% left coverage from 9 sources. So it tells you that this specific article is like left leaning from the bias distribution. So you can actually go through and you can see what articles and what things are leaning or are biased towards a different side when it comes to, like, you know, political things and stuff like that, which I think is really cool, that you can actually see which news stations are reporting on it and that news station's bias and, you know, and everything like that. They have like a free version and then they have a paid version. I don't pay attention to news nearly as much as I should. I'm gonna be honest, because it always depresses me. I just play video games and watch YouTube.
Great, Otter. I'm happy too. And I didn't know that was a thing. That's pretty cool. A cool extension to do that.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Too bad you're using Chrome. I'm just kidding.
Bro's a Chrome hater. But no, yeah, like it is very difficult concepts to explain, Otter, and it's really hard to like we talked about this earlier before you joined, Otter. It's sad that people don't debate to find common ground. They just debate to try to win. And I think that's a big issue, because debating isn't designed to win or lose. It's designed to inform the other party of another perspective, to give them insight on the other side. And it's not necessarily to try to win a debate. You're just trying to understand. But people have gotten so caught up in trying to be the winner, or, you know, I'm him, bro, you know. They get so caught up in that mindset that they do anything they can to win the argument or the debate. What's the more thing ever debating to win? It's all ego driven because you want to be on top. Exactly. Yeah. Like right now, like Wolf and I have been talking about the same things, but we've, I've presented like counterpoints, and he's presented counterpoints to me, but we've come to an agreement that like there's a middle ground there, because
It's
that's how it should be. I'm not trying to attack Wolf for what he says, because like it's funny because Wolf, you said this like a few times in this stream now, like you're like, this may be, you may think I'm crazy by saying this or whatever. I've not thought that once. With everything you've brought to me, that you said that, I did not think that you were crazy once, or think that you're wild for thinking that way. I would ask like, or I would sit there and listen and ask like, why do you think that way, or continue explaining like why you think that way, because I'm genuinely curious, like what that perspective entails, and obviously you're the one to give it. And I love
yeah,
I love
and
learning
it's
about people's perspectives.
it goes back to what you said earlier about how people hello Wolftail, how people don't listen to understand, they listen to respond. And it's like okay, are you hearing me? Like, are you listening to me, or are you just hearing me? You know what I mean? I'm trying to one that I already did. True enough. Fair enough.
True enough. Fair enough. Have a good day.
That's it. It's over.
No, yeah. That's the whole point, right? And again, in my profession of clinical trial management, I've worked with like in the healthcare system for such a long time, 7 years now, and I've worked with many clinics, hospitals. I've worked with so many doctors, so many specialists, so many nurses, so many different kinds of people from all walks of life, right? And when I'm doing my job and talking to patients, I have to develop a type of empathy and patience, no pun intended, to conversate with these patients and to try to understand like why they're signing up for this clinical trial. And a lot of it is their own stories or whatever. And over time, like, it's funny because Christy has seen this, like when I work, whenever she's just hanging around, she sees a different side of me, and she's like, what the fuck, babe? Why aren't you nice like that to me? The fuck? And she gets mad. But like, I developed like a personality that fits that of being a listener and a patient person to these patients, because my job is to identify whether or not this patient can qualify and participate in this trial because of the exclusion and inclusion criteria of this trial that is set forth by the sponsor or the pharmaceutical company. So whenever I'm listening to their stuff that they're telling me, I have to dissect little bits of information that could possibly exclude them from the trial or otherwise include them into the trial. So I have to genuinely listen and break down everything that they're saying. Thanks, babe. Making me look like an asshole now. But I had to do that for 7 years, dude. I've done that for 7 years. So whenever people try to talk to me, and I think this is why a lot of people like talk to me a lot, is because whenever you talk to me or you come to me about an issue, I will sit there and listen, and I will respond to almost every point that you bring up. Because again, I'm flawed. I'm gonna forget, but like I'll try to address every point that you bring up. Like everything you've told me today, I've tried to specifically target the points that you made and try to either counterpoint or say that I agree.
Yeah.
That just comes with years of fucking doing the shit that I've done. But anyway, that's a little tangent. But the point I'm trying to make is like, I've learned to listen, to genuinely listen, and I think that's a skill. Not to humble brag, but I think that's a skill that most people don't have nowadays because of the selfishness that they have. Because like that phrase goes, they're listening to respond, they're not listening to understand. And I think that's a big problem. And again, social media, I think, is a very big proponent of that because it's a selfish platform designed to encourage selfishness. And we just kind of are seeing the remnants of that effect take place.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, listening to actually listen, especially when somebody is telling you something that you know or that you think is just nonsense, is definitely a skill that you kind of have to learn. To treat everything that somebody says not necessarily as fact, but as their fact, and then to respond not like they're morons, but as you would, when teaching somebody. You know what I mean? I have to deal with that all more often than I would like to admit. But yeah, and it's definitely become a skill I've had to learn, especially over the last year or so, because I get extremely passionate about certain things, and sometimes that passion and that emotion can come out, which is why I don't like to necessarily talk about a lot of topics, because I can get passionate, and in my passion, I can sometimes get emotional, and it's something I've gotten way better at. I used to be way worse at it, but it is definitely a skill to not let emotion take over the conversation. That you have to learn. I'm just a moron then who ends up being dumb. Nah, that's not true.
It's funny. I'll respond to what you said first, then I'll address what Rabbit said. I will say this though. I exactly what you said, but with me too. I wasn't born with that skill. I was the same person. Like I would get seriously heated with certain ideas. Like I was one of those people back in the day, and I'm gonna fully admit this, that when I learned something, I took that as fact. And if people would argue facts, I get really aggressive to try to show that they're stupid.
Yeah.
Obviously, I don't do that anymore, right?
Yeah.
With the job that I picked up, I kind of look at it as like it was like I guess meant for that job for me, because it allowed me to learn that even though something is factual, like let's say the sky is blue, right?
Yeah.
But this person over here thinks the sky is green. The younger version of me would have been like, "Are you fucking stupid?" You know?
Yeah.
It's fucking blue. But the me now would be like, I would ask, do you like why do you think the sky is green? Then lo and behold, they have a type of eye disorder or eye disability where they see colors different. Like what is that? Chromatokia or whatever the heck it's called.
Yeah.
And to them, the truth is that the sky is green, right?
Yeah.
But my younger self would never take that into consideration. But my older self now, like what I am now, I not have to, but I will take that into consideration. That they could be seeing the world a different way than I do. And I guess a lesson in that in itself, right? Just because you see one thing one way doesn't mean it's the correct way for everyone else. That doesn't mean it's a fact for everybody else. There are different. That ties into the idea that there are different truths, right? There can be different truths because
I think it's
very important.
Yeah, I think it's more so that there is a truth, but you see the truth differently based on your perspective.
That's
if that makes sense. Yeah.
That was actually way better put. That's what I was trying to go for, but I for some reason couldn't think of that. So thank you for that.
I also think
there's truth, but different ways of looking at it. Yeah.
I also think that it's heavily, and this is from kind of personal experience, but there's also a big impact not only on potentially somebody's perspective, but I believe that your opinions and the way that you see things can change based on the type of people you surround yourself with. Yes. You know? So I've seen people who used to think one way completely shift after being surrounded by, other people. And it's kind of wild actually to see because sometimes it could be a pretty dramatic perspective shift, and it's just again, it goes back to the whole self-inflicted wounds of society. Yeah. But yeah, that is one thing that I always try to, going back to the whole research and look things up and do your own stuff, is don't trust everybody. Don't trust a single person on like anything, like you don't just trust me because I'm wrong a lot. And hell, if I find out I'm wrong, I will straight up be like, oh shit, I was wrong, my bad. I think that's another problem too, actually. That reminds me of another point. I think people are too scared to be wrong. I think being wrong has become such like a horrible thing. And
taboo, basically.
Yeah, and it's like our entire society, not even just our society, but humanity in itself has become better through being wrong. Everything that we have built and done and accomplished was not done the first time. There was all kinds of being wrong to get it right. That's how it is. So it's just people need to accept that sometimes they're just wrong, and that's okay. You don't It's not like me saying that you're wrong is not me saying, "Oh, you're fucking stupid dumbass. You're a waste of breath." No, it's me saying, "Hey, you like it's okay. You were, you misinformed or you misunderstood this, but this is technically the right way or this is technically the right thing."
Mhm.
But I don't think negatively of you. That's just you. I mean, that happens to me all the time. I'll say one thing about, like a culture, society, or some kind of topic, and somebody be like, "Well, actually, no, that's not true. Here are the articles, or here's the proof that that's not true." And it's a simple matter of going, "Oh shit, my fault. Okay,
Yeah.
boom, done." And I don't have to fly off the handle like, "No, I'm right, you're wrong. That article's you're biased. That's stupid. That's false." It's it's just a simple matter of accepting that I can be wrong and that I have the capacity to be wrong and grow. And it's
Yeah.
just, yeah, you don't learn from success, you only learn from failure. That is so true.
Yeah. That's very true. For coming, so a good this is another story from a clinic that I used to work at, and there was a study wrong wolf. There was a study that I was conducting or I was coordinating, right? And then there's a patient that came in, and it was regarding a type of medication for, I forgot. I think it was another
No,
liver
you,
study
Pat.
or whatever. But this patient was the first, and I remember this person too. I know this. I remember this guy very well, and he's actually a really cool guy. Um, but he was the first person to come to me and tell me, "George, I've done my research. I know what this drug does. I know that this is a phase 3 study. I know what that means, and I have some questions for you, and I want you to answer them before I want to participate in this clinical trial." And I told it, like, he came at me trying to, like, I guess, like, to what I realized now is try to one up me, right, or try to catch me off guard. And he kind of and it's funny the way I reacted kind of took him aback. But I sat there and I was like, awesome, I'm happy you did research on it. Like, all right, now, so tell me what are your concerns? Like, what do you want me to answer for you? And he was like shocked. He was like, that's like, he was expecting me to be like a bit aggressive to him, but he was just very shocked to see my response. Because at the end of the day, like, whenever I'm getting patients studies, I want them to be informed, because before they can participate, they have to read over a document called an informed consent. It's
Yeah.
literally in the name, informed consent, so that they know what they're getting into. And I love it when patients do their research and look into this drug and look into the trial. It's all public information, by the way. A lot of people think this is all classified shit. No, if the clinical trial is running currently, you can look up clinicaltrial.gov, look up like the drug or whatever, and you'll see the entire like thing on there, like the consent form, the protocol, all that cool stuff. It's all science stuff, but if you want to educate yourself, it's available. And I love it when patients did that. But this guy acted like he was trying to get me, like a gotcha moment, right? But he was so shocked when I was like, actually smiling. I'm like, all right, awesome, you're informed. Because my whole thing is I was mentored by these great people in the industry that, you know, we're not here to try to convince people to join a study. We're here because we're trying to understand this drug. And we want to get people in here who genuinely want to be a part of it, not because we're trying to fill a number or get money out of this person. No, we're trying to really understand this medication, and we want to make sure that this person knows what they're getting into, and we want to make sure that they know that they are going to be in the best healthcare, the best care that we can provide. And so, yeah, this guy ended up participating in the trial. He ended up completing it. It was actually a really good time. Every visit was like a treat with him. And it was funny because he would always ask for me. Like, we would rotate patients every time in clinic, but he would make it a point. He's like, "Hey, is George in? I want to see him. He's cool. The other person I saw, I didn't like her. I want to see George." But yeah, it's because of the fact that I never pushed him once. Because every time
Yep.
he had a question, I would answer. I would answer the question. But if it was like something that I couldn't answer, I would call a doctor and take that extra step. Hey, I'm not a certified medical professional, but I know a doctor, one of the doctors here who can answer that question for you. And I would take the extra time to make sure this guy knew what he was getting into. But he loved me because of that. And like, that's the whole point of that is, whenever I didn't know something, I had no problem pulling somebody who knew more than me to explain that. I never once thought of the idea to make some shit up or to pretend like I know, because why would I do that? At that point, I'm lying to the patient. I don't ever want to do that. You never want to do that in research. But it's also because I've kind of learned that skill, you know, in work and all that. I've also followed that principle in real life. Like whenever someone comes up to me about something and I have no idea what you're talking about, I'm gonna tell you I don't. But hey, I might know someone who does, and I'll refer you to that person who knows way more than I do. And
Yeah.
you're right, Wolf. It sucks because people don't want to admit that they don't know. They don't want to say those words that, hey, I don't know. But for me, I will say that. Like, if you ask me about space engines of rocket ships, I'm like, I don't fucking know. Bro, like,
Yeah.
look at me. Go look that up. Google's probably going to be better than asking me, you know? Yeah, or whoever. I might know someone who I can point you to them. You know, like Ark, he works for Lockheed Martin. You know, go talk to him. But you know what I mean? Like, or if someone comes up to me about graphic design, I would definitely I'll refer them to Rabbit. He's a graphic designer. I'm like, hey, I don't know graphic design, but I know someone who does. But I think that that's a very vital skill that a lot of people. I guess it's sad to say it's a skill because it shouldn't be. It should be common sense, but it's become a skill now to say I don't know, and it's sad, really, that has to be a skill.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I enjoy having conversations with Wolf, is because I know we've had conversations off stream and off topic, right, or off the videos, and you would tell me about things that you would, because I remember a lot of topics that you talked to me about before, and you were like, oh, I don't want to tell you this because I think you're going to think negatively, but I've shown you that I haven't, because I don't care. Like, not that I don't care, but it's because I genuinely find it interesting that you think that way or certain things.
Yeah.
And because again, the basis of why I do the work that I do, and also the degree that I chose in college, is because I love the basis idea of what science is. It's the never-ending search for the truth, or the never-ending search of what we believe to be the truth is. And it's just basically a never-ending experiment of identifying information. Because today's truth cannot be true in the next 10 years. But that's because we've learned more about it. And that's the process that I love.
Yeah.
I've always been a curious person. I've always been eager to understand and learn people's perspectives, different lives, different ideas of what they believe to be true, or whatever the case that may be. I just love listening, because at the end of the day, like, if you're not listening and not learning and understanding, you can easily fall, which I think is also very common, into a cognitive bias. And I know and I'm going to touch on what you said earlier about how, like, that one friend of yours had this perspective, but when they started hanging out with this group of people, their whole perspective changed because they started associating themselves with people who thought this way. I think that could be a good thing, but I also think that could be a bad thing. And again, that comes with the idea of cognitive bias, right?
Yep.
When you are surrounded by people who believe that this this pen that I have in my hand is white, you have a higher chance of believing that this pen is white compared to one random person coming at you and saying this pen is black, right? One person will say that this pen is black, but your group of friends say that it's white. You'll be like, huh, freaking idiot. Why do you think it's black? My friends and I say it's white. Majority wins, you know? It's just that hive mind mentality, which is also another thing that I find really kind of interesting, because it just goes back to a lot of, like, tribal or primal instincts of a human being. Because back then we were more tribal than we are now, but I think that there's a modern version of that, and I think it's called clicks, or whatever whatever word you want to use.
Oh yeah, for sure. And there's like a sense of disappointment, right? Like, you don't want to disappoint your clique or whatever by having different beliefs than them.
Right. And it's interesting, though, like, a good example is that video, right, with Dr. Mike talking to those 20 anti-vaxxers. He was basically surrounded, like, they threw him in the meat pit, basically, surrounded by all these, like, carnivores or whatever, trying to, like, eat at him to try to. And I noticed a lot of the people that were anti-vaxxers, they tried really hard to make him look like an asshole. But I loved his responses to everything that they threw at him. He was very compassionate. He was empathic. He was patient. He was calm. and it just made all the other people look crazy. They're not crazy. They're just they have really bad emotional regulation.
And he wasn't afraid to say I don't know. Going back to that whole thing, he was not afraid to say I don't know. I don't have an answer, but this is my knowledge. This is what I do know.
And it's funny because he said the same thing that I kind of brought up earlier too, that he loves it when patients come at him with when they're informed about stuff. He loves it whenever the patient comes up to him and says, I did research. He's like, great. Like, what did you find out? Let's talk about it together. That's a great doctor. So like, if a doctor, again, this is also a PSA. If you go to a doctor and your doctor gets annoyed that you do research, find yourself another doctor, because that's not a good doctor. I can probably, if I get to know that doctor, I can tell you 10 points of why this doctor is a bad doctor. Because the beginning of it all is that the doctor is there to serve you. A lot of people don't realize that, even though it should be, again, common knowledge. The doctor is there to serve you, to take care of you. If the doctor is not acknowledging your opinions, they're not going to take care of you to the best of your interest. It all just dials back to just common courtesy and respect. If the doctor doesn't ever respect the fact that you took time out of your day to research a topic that you wanted to discuss with them, because they see it as like I guess an attack on them.
Some doctors don't know that either. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. You need to find another doctor. And it's sad to say there are a lot of bad, idiot, dumbass, stupid doctors in the world that have this mentality, and it's so frustrating. And I've worked with some of them. I've worked with a handful of those fuckers. They're great doctors. They're very knowledgeable, but they have shit people skills. But on the flip side, I've worked with some very compassionate doctors who take their time, who listen. Those guys I spend more of my time with, because I found that to be more enjoyable than dealing with the hard ass who wants to just get in and out, who looks at you as like just a fucking number on a spreadsheet.
The Dr. House wannabe.
Yeah, right. Basically. But yeah, like that's who I've associated myself with a lot with those doctors. I spend more time with those because that's the kind of person I wanted to be. Compassionate, understanding, listening, yada, yada, yada. But yeah, no, like if a doctor doesn't take the time of day or take the moment to just listen to you after you say that you've done research, you need to find another doctor, because again, that quality of care can be questioned at that point if they don't even take the time to listen to what you have to say.
Yeah.
Because like I guess another example would be like if you're taking a medication for something that you have and you're telling the doctor, hey, I started having muscle cramps in both my arms. I've never had it before, but it's only started after I took this medication. If this doctor doesn't give a damn about what you think, he's going to be like, it's probably just something temporary. You can stay on it, whatever. I'm not going to change your dose. Compared to a doctor who genuinely listens, they'll be like, okay, you know what? You're having this symptom. Let's lower the dosage or let's change the medication.
Yeah.
There is a correlation with standard of care to compared to how empathic the doctor is. There is a correlation there. And again, you can say that that correlation does not necessarily mean causation, but I've seen correlations there that can statistically be backed by one or the other.
I think some of that ties into like what Bake said about distrust of the medical industry. I feel like if you have a doctor that's not going to listen to you and not going to take you seriously, and it's actually kind of funny because Dr. Mike has said this before. Nobody knows the patient better than the patient. So like if the doctor's not going to listen to you and they're not going to take in what you say about your own body and your own experiences, then you need a new doctor. And I'm pretty sure Dr. Mike has said that too.
Yeah, he has.
So definitely, and especially with the whole distrust of the medical industry to begin with, if you have a patient who's going in there already sketched out, like I keep bringing up I have a family member who has recently, I don't know exactly what has happened to them, but another family member kept telling them to go to the doctor and whatnot. And this family member was like, I'm not going in any doctor. I'm not letting them inject me with anything. They're not sticking anything in me, And it's like, there's already that distrust of the medical field. So if you have a doctor who's, going to take that and then is going to be an asshole about it, that doctor's not helping anyone. Because they're just going to reaffirm your concerns with the medical industry in the first place, and then you're not going to be fixed, and it's not going to help you, and then you're going to not want to ever go to the doctor again, and it's all around just a bad thing, you know. And
Yeah.
I understand that there can be some doctors who don't have very good people skills, um, and whatnot. I do think being a doctor, you have to have some kind of people skills. Uh,
Yes.
at the very least, when you're first meeting somebody, because like there are doctors who know a lot, but they're not very good at talking to people. But you could trust them with your life. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
But they just they come off as kind of assholeish and whatnot. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, no, definitely get a doctor that listens to you for sure. I switched my new doctor. I had a primary care doctor that was awesome, um, and always paid attention, always did everything. And he was old. He was actually my mom's doctor as well. So he eventually retired, and I every time I'd have something go wrong, I'd wind up having to just go to like a care facility. And I didn't get a primary care doctor in a while, and I remember I'm like 90% sure I broke my pinky toe. I kicked the couch. I went to go kick a ball, and I kicked the couch, and I couldn't walk on my foot for like 2 days. The pain was unbearable. I went to the ER, and they just treated me like I was faking it. Like I walked in there, and they they almost didn't believe me that I was in pain. And then they took X-rays of my foot, and they're like, "Yeah, nothing's wrong. You're fine." And I was like, "What? Huh?" I was like, "What do you mean that I'm fine? There's clearly something wrong." And to this day, my pinky toe is always hovering above the ground. Where it used to
Oh
sit
man.
flat on the ground, like the rest of my toes, it's slightly higher now. And I get these random deep itches in the toe. I should probably go back to my primary care doctor now and have them look at it. Although I don't think anything can be done about it now because this was like 2 years ago. But um, but anyway, and that was really freaking annoying. And I never wanted to go back to the ER doctor. And then like I've had constant headaches and stuff, and I got my new primary care doctor, and I told him I've had constant headaches, and the first thing he said was, "We're gonna get a scan. We're gonna see if there's anything else going on." Immediately. Like,
Yeah.
and I was like, "That's awesome." This guy actually like listened to me. He understood that I was getting frequent headaches, like 2 or 3 migraines a week, and was like, "Let's get a scan. Let's figure out what's going on." Luckily, nothing came back. I'm perfectly fine. I think I just get really bad allergy headaches. But um but it was still that like concern that he was like, "Okay, I've listened to you. I understand you. I think this is what we should do." And he did. And he was super nice about it and everything. So I want to go back to that doctor. it's the whole it's the whole premise of like, the doctor needs to be able to respect the patient and listen to the patient because nobody knows the patient better than the patient.
Yeah, and I think it's 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 unfortunate, right? When I hear
Science
patients say
some people
that
debate it.
doctors discredit something that a patient is complaining about. Um, and there's been a handful of times. This might be a sad story, but it is relatable to what we're talking about. When I worked in oncology, there was a patient that came in. Um, this happened like years ago, so I think the NDA cleared, but I'm not going to give any information. But it was for an oncology trial. It was a type of treatment for a specific cancer. Um, the person qualified, and doctors cleared him to participate. And to give you guys a little context, when you work in oncology, which is cancer, uh, cancer research, when you get to that level, that stage of looking for cancer research, we are the last chance that you have to live, because you're coming to us for experimental medication because everything else that has been approved did not work. So we are basically your last shot at living, you know.
No pressure.
Yeah, no pressure, right? Anyway, this one individual signed up because he qualified, met all the standards, protocols, and all the other stuff. We got him enrolled in the trial, signed up and everything. Um, they get the medication, right? And 2 days later, after being checked the second day, he looked like he was getting so much better. He was being more responsive. He was passing all the cognitive assessments that we conducted. He looked a lot better, a lot healthier. And the cancer was shrinking. 2 days later, I go in to do a cognitive assessment. Doctor stops me and says that that person passed away due to a heart issue.
Huh.
What it sucks is that.
Okay, Kit, I did see your message. You have a good one. Thanks for coming by.
The drug didn't cause it after investigating it, but what sucks is his heart just gave out because he had pre-existing conditions that were cardiologically related. But what's sad is that the cancer disappeared.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
that's insane, and that will be like that. There's like a whole. That's like the whole thing again about how people could take that and they could say, "Oh, so it was that thing's fault then." It's like, no, that's not what happened. You need to actually look at the full story, and this is why I always have it research, because anybody could take that and take that snippet out of it and say, "Oh, because of this person passed away," and it's like, well, no, you took a snippet out of a much larger piece of information here. And I mean, that does suck. It's just human body's so complicated, man. And people are so people are so quick to just disregard. And I think that's one reason I can get kind of passionate, especially about like when it comes to like the science and like the medical field and whatnot, is I can get passionate about it is because like you're completely disregarding the work of all of these people who have put in the time, dedicated their lives to fixing these problems, and you're just saying that they're all shills, that all of these people are just in it for the money, that they don't actually care. And like, I don't work in that field, but I could imagine if I worked in that field, hearing that all the time would be so hard, it's so frustrating to me hearing all these people talk all this shit about, the big pharma. I make jokes about it, but they talk shit about like all the doctors work for big pharma. They don't actually care about you. All the medicine that they give you is to keep you sick. And it's like, no, that's not at all what it is. That's not at all what is happening,
Yeah.
And it's like this whole, God, we could talk about the whole ivermectin situation, It's just like, I don't understand this. That like when Dr. Love said that society is not scientifically literate, it's like people take offense to that, but it's the truth. I mean, even if you just look at just like a quick rundown for anybody who might not know the ivermectin situation, there are people who were taking ivermectin, and there were doctors who were prescribing ivermectin, from what I've heard, to patients to treat COVID, which makes no sense to me. Because if you have a basic understanding of biology, if you took freaking biology in elementary school or wherever the very earliest biology you can take is, you would know that a parasite and a virus are different things, and you cannot kill a virus with an anti-parasitic. So it's still just, but people don't believe that. People they have this doubt in their mind, or maybe it's not doubt, maybe they think something else is going on, but I don't know what it is. But it's like, you have these people who do this research to make this very specialized medication that is supposed to fight something in your body, and you're taking a different medication that not only is not for your species, but is not even for the disease or the virus that you're taking it for, because it's an anti-parasitic. So it's just, it's so, there's this constant battle of like the medical industry and people, because you have this constant blast of just, I feel like, misinformation and understanding. And then I also feel like some of it is like it's cool to be quote different and to hate on the medical industry, you know, because everyone always has to everyone always needs saved from something, you know? Like they always need saved. There's always something that they need to have bad going on, that they need to distrust something. And it's just it's so weird to me, you know? Like I just don't understand. Like everybody wants to
Yeah.
I don't know. It's dumb. Is my bottom line.
Yeah, it is. It's funny when you talk about the point you made earlier of how it must get tiring being told by people that you work for. I'm not talking about you, Wolf, because I know you joke around about it, right? But
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
this happened a lot when I was working on the COVID vaccine for Pfizer. Um, I thought it was really cool. I looked at the actual drug and its compound and what it would do. I thought it was an interesting take on an mRNA based vaccine. So, I when I had an opportunity, I found out about it. I signed up to manage a trial, coordinate it.
Once bitten, twice shy kind of
Um,
thing. Yeah.
yeah, once spent. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, rabbit. But I remember when I talked about it. I actually, it's funny. One of my Facebook posts a long time ago. I had a really rough day. We saw like 50 patients that day, signing them up for this trial, getting them dosed, and all other stuff. Um, I mean, I remember making a post about how late I worked. I literally would work some 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. like 5 days a week. That shit sucked. But that's because they were trying to fast track the approval process. So we'd have to enter all the data for every single patient that we saw and randomize that same day. We'd have to transfer all the source documentation that's on paper and put it into this thing we call electronic data capture system, which is just a data management system that all had to be submitted within the hour. Then it was cross-checked and quality controlled that within the next hour. And if anything was incorrect, we had to go back there and fix it. So that took a lot of time, right?
Yeah.
But I remember making that post on Facebook saying I'm working on trying to get this thing understood. That way we can approve it and get people vaccinated and stuff like that. Because you know, I just had limited knowledge of the mRNA vaccine, but with the knowledge that I had then, I said, yeah, you could take it. You should take it or whatever. But I never forced anyone to do it. I'm not a big proponent of forcing people to do it.
Yeah.
But I remember that Facebook post. I got attacked by family members, friends, or not friends anymore, but a lot of people calling me a big pharma shill, calling me a devil worshiper, telling me that I'm part of the Illuminati, saying that I'm the reason people are dying. I'm the reason why you know conspiracies are real. They're calling me all these mean things. Um, some of them even like really bad things that I'm not going to say on stream, but it sucked, because I would be 12-hour days, man, trying to just do my job by trying to make sure that this vaccine is safe to take for the rest of the population.
Yep.
And I don't usually let things get to me, but being told that constantly over and over again, I'm a human being, right? I
Yeah,
get
yeah,
things
yeah.
so freaking much, and I have thick skin, but if it's constantly thrown in my face, it's gonna affect me. And I remember my ex-wife telling me, because she was a nurse too, and this is at the height of COVID, and she was tired, she was overwhelmed, so we were both just overwhelmed. But she could see with me, like on the posts and all that, and she would see like how much um slander I was being thrown at just because I was trying to, at the time, with the knowledge, again, the knowledge that I knew, I thought I was doing a good thing, right?
Yeah.
Hell, I still think I did a good thing, and to this day.
Yeah, that whole thing was wild. I don't have as much. I mean, I don't think I got as much as you did. But before the job I had now, I mean, I worked with. I worked for Maximus Federal, and they do like contracting for certain things. And I worked with like a vaccine finder. You know, I worked for the Cars Help Desk, so we worked with Vaccine Finder, VAMS, a bunch of these systems to track vaccines and things like that. And I would get calls I remember one call, the first one I got actually, where the guy was just like, "So how does it feel knowing you were working for a company that's killing kids?" And I was just like, "What?" And then this was all because of the COVID vaccine. 'Cause it was the height of the COVID vaccine when I got this job. So, and you get calls like that, and it's like, what? It's like, dude, no. What are you talking about? But yeah, I mean, I don't think I got it as bad as you did. Um, but yeah, no, it sucks to be kind of like blamed for that. In all I did was the tech support for the systems. So I had like nothing to do with anything. I just made sure the systems worked. That's all I did. And so it's like first off, you're yelling at the wrong dude, okay? Like
Yeah.
I have nothing to do with the vaccine, making it distribute. I have nothing to do with that, okay? I'm the wrong guy. Secondly, you're wrong. So, but yeah, no, it just sucks. People get, and I feel like it goes back to like a passionate thing. Like people get really passionate about their own lives and about their well-being, and everybody just wants to be safe, right? They just want to feel, safe. They want to not feel like anything bad's going to happen to them. And there's just constant battle of trust and distrust, and like, and it just sucks. And it sucks because you get one person or two people or however many who have any type of following or any type of whatchamacallit, just like,
Bake said.
oh no, this is being used to gain sympathy and leniency for big pharma. You don't.
We're gonna censor that really quick. No, I'm just
hold on. Let's see. Oh, I can't time people out in your chat. Anyway,
It's on YouTube, so.
Oh yeah. This message was mysteriously removed.
Oh, what happened to that message? I don't know. No, I know what you're talking about. No, anyway, continue.
But yeah, it's just like, I don't even really remember what I was talking about. But yeah, no, it's just like yeah, people with followings, they get this notion in their head, and they get this idea in their head, and it's weird because some of the things I've heard people say, I don't even think they believe it, but like they have a following, and it gets them attention, and it makes people click on their videos, and it makes people pay attention to them, so they like believe that they either force themselves to believe it, or they just don't care because it's getting them what they need or what they want, but they just keep this. Yeah, they all spread this misinformation about all these vaccines and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, I guess my bottom line is like, our lifespans have extended. Our average life has gotten higher than it's ever been, and everything that we have done that's because of everything science has done. The medical vaccines. I mean, how do you think all these other vaccines were eradicated, or diseases were eradicated? It was because of vaccines, man. Like, it's and the reason that some of this stuff, I believe that the reason that some of this stuff is even coming back is because people aren't getting vaccines, and it's gonna wind up again being a self-inflicted wound of people, bringing back diseases that have been long since been eradicated because they refuse to get vaccines or something, if they were eradicated, if they were suppressed. I think most of them were eradicated. Well, the specific instance, this was years ago. I don't think it's happened recently, but I'm probably exaggerating a bit when I say that diseases will come back. I don't know if they will. But the whole point is that, like, the reason we are where we are, the reason that that diseases have gone away, almost entirely, if not entirely, is because of the vaccines. But there was an instance of Black Plague years ago that they went to some other country, and then they ate something, yeah, and then it came back, and it's just like, whoa, you know. But it's just like, but as far as I know, they were okay. Why? Because of our fucking medical science, and it's just like. It's like we've come so far, and it's so frustrating being somebody who loves science and who like researches this stuff and finds all this stuff fascinating, like the way the body works and everything. Watching us come so far, to see us take so many steps back as a society when it comes to medical science, and like, is just so frustrating. It's
It
just
is. Yeah, it is, and but at the same time though, like, I don't want people to just take everything that medical professionals say at face value. And again, Dr. Mike kind of says the same thing. Like, it's good to question. It's good to be skeptical, and I think it's important to be skeptical about everything, right? But I do think there's a fine line between being skeptical and being a conspiracy theorist, or believing in conspiracy, because being skeptical means that you're open to accepting that truth to be true. Being from what my experience and what I understand, being a conspiracy theorist, you're just looking to be proven right and everything else wrong. So you have a closed-mindedness that isn't going to really benefit anybody, because you are dead set on trying to prove that this theory is correct and everything else is wrong. So I just want to make that that differentiation there. So yeah, I appreciate skeptics. I kind of find a conspiracy theorist a little redundant. I'm not going to say annoying, but redundant. But again, like with everything else, I'm always going to be open to hearing what they say and that kind of thing. But going back to what you said about vaccines and stuff, and it's funny because I think it's funny when I have conversations, debates with people with the medical world, world or whatever, when people come at me and they're like, George, why is the medicine or the healthcare system designed to treat rather than prevent? And I'm over here like, you do know that's what vaccines are doing, right? And they're like, I don't want to take a vaccine. It's like, but you're also saying that we should work on preventative rather than treating. Like, yeah, you should focus on preventing me getting sick. And I'm like, that's what a vaccine is. Like, so and I've had debates with people, and it's like it's a no-win situation, right?
Yeah.
And I try to understand where they're coming from. I really do. Like, I'm very patient with them. I listen to them. They're usually screaming or yelling or raising their voice at me. But yeah, it's a very common idiom that has been repeated multiple times, and I hear it all the time, and I see it on the medical Reddits that I'm on the clinical Reddits that I follow, and it's so redundant to the point where it's starting to really annoy me. Because like,
we've got a great
you can only
show
say it so many times, right? Where people will try to get at you, try to get you that gotcha moment and say, yeah, you're a shill for big pharma. You just want to treat a symptom rather than prevent. I've worked on vaccine studies before. Like, I've tried, you know what I mean? That is the definition of what a vaccine is. But then you start becoming an anti-vaxxer because you don't understand. Again, it goes back to the point what you said of being science illiterate. You don't understand the components of what a vaccine has. Like, a lot of people don't know what an adjuvant is. A lot of people don't know that the flu vaccine, or the flu shot is an inactive version of the current strain of the flu. Yes, we're inoculating you with the flu, but we're giving you a weakened version of it. That way your body can develop, antibodies to make you to lessen or weaken the symptoms that you would get from getting the actual virus. But then, that's also a topic of debate. I know that.
I've heard that so many times. They're actually injecting you with the virus in those vaccines, and it's like, they're giving your body the instruction manual for how to fight the vaccine. That's how your body works. Once you have the disease or virus or whatever in your body, your antibodies, your white blood cells or whatever, then break it down and they learn about it, and then they know how to fight it. That's the TLDR version of it. But that's how it works. So you're being given an inactive version of that, basically, like, to simplify it, you're basically giving a dead version of the virus so that your body can rip it apart and bisect it, or dissect. Is it dissect? I don't know. Anyway, to rip it apart, to study it, and then to learn how to fight it in the future if you get it, And so it might not even prevent some symptoms. Specifically talking about the flu vaccine, it might not prevent all symptoms, but it will weaken the symptoms that you do have. It will lessen them if you do happen to get any. And so it's like, it's again, the whole like science.
Literacy.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And back to the term adjuvant. Do you know what an adjuvant is by chance or no?
I do not know. I do not.
So an adjuvant is a very common it's a very common ingredient that's involved with I think almost all of vaccines nowadays. An adjuvant is basically a biological material that is designed to instigate an immune response. So a lot of people don't know that. So sometimes, like for example, there's an adjuvant in the flu vaccine, right? Well, the reason why they have that is because if your body doesn't have anything to incite an immune response, there's no point in giving you that weekend flu, because the immune system in the body is actually a very complex and very sensitive system in your body. A lot of people think like, oh, it's just something foreign in your body, let's go and attack it and kill it. Well, no. If there's something foreign in your body, your immune system doesn't know how to go about dealing with that. So sometimes the immune system will ignore it completely because it doesn't see it as as an enemy or an opposition to the body. Like it doesn't bring damage or danger. So why would it react? An adjuvant is designed to do that. Think of it more of like an agitator, right? Like, hey, like there's the flu, the weakened version of the flu, but we don't care about that. But hey, what
poking the bear.
Yeah, that's an basically like that. Oh, that adjuvant. Let's get that. We know that's bad for sure. So then on this, in congruency, it'll also look at the weakened flu virus and be like, you know what? While we're here, let's learn how to prevent this from attacking us, and that's what an adjuvant does. But what's crazy to me is not crazy to me, but the most common question when we were doing the COVID vaccine is people were asking like we looked into what vaccines are. What's an adjuvant? Is that the what was it at the time? What was the people thing crazy about? It was at the
Tracker?
Mark of the Beast.
Oh.
Or was it the tracker? It was the Mark of the Beast, but it was also like it was like a tracker, I think, or what was it? Like a micro microchip.
Yeah, microchip.
Yeah, that was one of the big crazes, right? Or the religious people thought it was the mark of the beast. Like, is an adjuvant like the microchip, or is it the mark of the beast? I'm like, no, it's meant to elicit an immune response so your body understands how to fight COVID when you do get COVID. But people just didn't want to accept that. And that is what's interesting to me. Like the lack of understanding incites fear. So whenever someone hears something they don't understand, even after they're explained what it is, they will always be skeptical, which would then I would argue that would just becomes conspiracy minded, because they could then believe that person like for me, like if I'm explaining to them, they're gonna assume that I'm just explaining that because I'm reading it off of a script, or I'm reading it because Big Pharma, according to them, I have to say it because of Big Pharma, and it's just it's just one of those interesting concepts that really just still to this day kind of blow my mind, right? And like it's interesting to really think about it. Like when I was in college, when I was taking, it was interesting to understand how vaccines work, like breaking it down by molecule, by adjuvant, by the actual virus, and seeing how the immune system responds and reacts to that is really interesting. But it's not something that an everyday person will ever know. Like you'll never see like a businessman understand how that works. You'll never see like a fireman knows how that works. Normal people aren't going to know how that works. So obviously they're not going to, if they don't understand it or don't know about it, they're going to be skeptical. And it's okay to be skeptical, but it's also, but I believe it's not okay to be given the correct information and then discredit that because you have this, what's the word I'm looking for? Have this irrational fear of the unknown. I think that's where the problem kind of turns into. Hold on, what did Rabbit say? As much as I like science, sometimes there's something to be said about advancing too fast. We don't want a Jurassic Park kind of situation as well. Your scientists were so preoccupied whether or not they could, but they didn't stop to think if they should. I agree with that. I know that the whole direwolf thing, although I want people to understand that those aren't purebred direwolves. Those are like a mixed breed of mostly husky genome with very little direwolf genome in the entire genetic code. I don't know if you heard about that wolf. They brought back the direwolf.
I heard something about that. I didn't look too much into it. I basically saw the article or saw the title and I was like, oh, that's cool. And then I didn't do anything else.
Yeah, I don't. If I'm being completely honest, something like Jurassic Park, we are decades from that ever being a reality, just because of how fragile the genome is we do not have any salvageable DNA or genome to utilize enough to resemble any kind of dinosaur that we would want to see. Now, something like the dodo bird, we could revive because those were recently extinct. We could revive them. But then, like,
You're a
you
dodo
can
bird.
also, yeah, a flying bird. But then you can. But the thing is, the problem comes about another perspective of ethics, right? Would it be ethical to bring back a dead species, even though Mother Nature has decided upon to eradicate that species? Although I'm not sure how the dodo birds went extinct. I don't know if it was our involvement with environment or was it natural selection. I don't know, but that's another debate for another time, right? You can always debate the ethics of whether or not you want to bring back a species. But also at the same time, when you bring back a species, you have no idea how that species is going to interact with the current, predators of today, right? So, but I think that just more entails of the dinosaurs bringing them back and stuff like that, or extinct animals like the mammoth. Actually, a better example would be the mammoth. There's been talks of bringing that species back because they're like the long descendants of the African elephant. I think it's the African elephant. I could be
Yeah.
wrong. You guys can, fact check me there if you guys want to, because I don't know. I'm not sure if I am, but they actually have genetic code of a actual woolly mammoth, but they can use that of its descendant, the African elephant, and actually recreate a quote unquote purebred mammoth. Just because we do have salvageable genome to use in that creation. But yeah, no. That's why people have their kids get chickenpox potentially at a young age when it's dangerous. So when you're older, it can be fatal. It can be fatal. You can be. There's actually been research studies that disproves that, Bake. That's why we don't do that anymore. It's actually very dangerous to do that because a lot of people who actually went to those chickenpox parties became immune compromised, which means that they developed autoimmune diseases later on in life.
That's
That was
crazy.
actually proven to be correlated too. No, it's okay. Like a lot of people don't know that, but my fault. It's all good. But again, but the thing is, that's because we had back in the day. We didn't have the knowledge that we have today because no one really took the time to conduct a trial or research that. But now we do. That's why you don't see that anymore. But anyway, remember that. I was more meaning just the quote, not the genetics. Oh, okay, Rabbit. Yeah. I know, but like a lot of people, like I've had conversations that too about people saying that we're coming close to Jurassic Park, but it's like we are not close at all. Genetic wise, genetic genome or engineering wise, close. Although I know people are excited to see the dire wolf or a version of the dire wolf come back, but people taking that leap to thinking that dinosaurs can come back, no, not in our lifetime. I'd be very surprised if we ever see a reintroduction of a dinosaur in our lifetime.
I think we're close to the zombie apocalypse and reviving the dinosaur.
Yeah, exactly. We're more close to that, if anything.
There's already I mean, there's the fucking fungal shit that takes over insects. I mean, hell, the day that thing spreads to humans, whew.
Yeah. But back to the vaccine thing. One of the common things that I hear a lot is when and I think we touched on this before, but I think it's when people weren't joined yet. But just to kind of reiterate that point, vaccines, I think, are. I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that every vaccine is perfect or safe 100%. Everything that the healthcare system or pharmaceuticals push through, everything has side effects, and I personally think it's a bit hypocritical to denote pharmaceuticals as or demonize pharmaceuticals. The reason I say that is because whenever you have a headache or whenever you get something that's very common to treat with the over-the-counter medication, and you take a Tylenol, where do you think that Tylenol came from? Like, where do you think that ibuprofen came from? Where do you think that nasal spray for your allergies came from? That were all tested through clinical trial research, through pharmaceutical research. But it becomes a problem when this is something that I've kind of noticed as a correlation. Again, I could be completely wrong with the causation part, but the commonality that I see is when it involves a doctor prescribing the medication. Now, to kind of further inform on that stance. I understand why people have hesitation, because there are the pharmaceutical companies at that point do have a little influence on why the doctor is prescribing you that medication, because whenever that medication is prescribed, the pharmaceutical company makes money. And there has been a form of lobbying, if y'all know what that, I'll explain what lobbying is if you don't know what it is. But for the sake of
Lobbyists.
this,
Ugh.
I'll kind of continue. Pharmaceutical companies do lobby doctors. They will send pharmaceutical representatives to doctors' offices to encourage or lobby a doctor to prescribe their medication for said indication. A good example is Ozempic. I forgot the company. Was it Eli Lilly or Pfizer? I forgot the pharma company for Ozempic. But when that became a popular thing for weight loss, that pharmaceutical company made it a point to send all their representatives to many various metabolic doctors or diabetic doctors or whoever who would prescribe this medication. They made it a point to promote to the doctors, like, hey, if a patient comes in and wants to lose weight, you will prescribe this medication. Here's a little something to encourage you to prescribe that. So that's why a lot of people have a little hesitation when it comes from a doctor. And I totally understand that. But the problem becomes when for that specific medication, it then derives into other medications that really don't provide any financial benefit to the pharmaceutical company. A very common one is lipid-lowering medication or cholesterol medications, like atorvastatin, or the statins, that's what they're called. Atorvastatin, rosuvastatin, simvastatin. These drugs only cost like $5-10, right? The pharma companies who made these like 50, 60 years ago don't make a lot of money off of that prescription. But there's been a handful of times when patients will come to doctors and say, I have high cholesterol, but because I read a book about some carnivore diet saying that it's fine to have high cholesterol, I'm not going to take that drug because that drug's been pushed by big pharma. And it's like, you're only prescribing me this medication because you make money off of it. Well, no, there's been a lot of literature saying that high cholesterol is linked to an increased occurrences of cardiovascular events. That's been proven time and time again. Multiple studies, multiple trials have been conducted to confirm that. Providing a lipid-lowering medication like a statin, like a rosuvastatin or simvastatin or the cholesterol medications, has shown a decrease in cardiovascular events in patients who take the medication compared to those who don't. So there's been research done on that multiple times to confirm that. But when patients come from the Ozempic ideology, right, they'll say, no, big pharma is going to get the benefit out of it because, apparently $5 is going to be a lot to that pharma company, right? They're not making hundreds and thousands of dollars, like thousands of dollars, like they are with Ozempic, because that drug it costs a lot. A lot of insurance companies don't cover it because the cost of the manufacturing is really high, set by the pharmaceutical company. So insurance companies don't cover that. But they don't really cover the lower medication for cholesterol because it doesn't cost a lot at all. But that's what I mean. Like, it changes when a doctor is involved because they have this preconceived notion that doctor is bought by big pharma, and that is where the issue comes about.
Yeah.
But again, like I said, it's very hypocritical because you are more than happy to directly pay the pharma company who created Tylenol, who created ibuprofen, who created NyQuil or whatever. You guys, it's just interesting to me that people are so hypocritical in that aspect. But yeah,
you would to what Rabbit just said, you would be more knowledgeable into like the terms of trials or whatever than I would, absolutely. But his comment, another issue is when there's very little data on pharmaceuticals of the person as well. For example, if it is brought out very quickly with very little knowledge of any long-term downsides, people will be afraid of the unknown future. I mean, as far as I understand, the trials go on for pretty decent amounts of time before it's released. The only exceptions to that, I think, would be something like the COVID, where it was a pandemic. They had to get something out, and that was really the only knowledge that I have of anything in my lifetime that they've had to do something that might have come out pretty quickly. But again, it was a pandemic and everybody was getting sick. And listen, as somebody who had a baby um, during the COVID, during the height of COVID, and whose baby got COVID, and I fought with multiple family members about the vaccine because when you're, I mean, it's more personal for me because when you're laying there next to your kid, having heard stories of kids getting killed by COVID, and your freaking barely 1 year old is running a fever of 100+ degrees, you know, and there's so little you can do because there's not a ton of medication you can give them at that young, and it's like you're like there were nights I didn't sleep. I just laid in there with her on some couch cushions, you know. It's definitely it's scary, and so I have a bit more of a personal take when it comes to the COVID vaccine and vaccines like that. Um, but yeah, no. So the COVID vaccine was released pretty quickly. But I don't know the details on how long trials were. If there, I would assume there has to be trials. I don't think they can release. Well, I take that back. I think there are like some emergency situations where you can release stuff without specific trials, but there's still like regulations. There's still stuff that has to be done. But you would know more about that than I would.
Yeah, so you pretty much had it. You pretty much spot on. There's a couple details that I can touch on definitely. So typically, a drug takes about anywhere from 15 to 20 years, believe it or not, before it can get approved. However, there are caveats to that. So there are 4 phases in clinical trial research: phase 1, phase 2, 3, and 4. Phase 1 is when it's first in humans. There is pre-phase 1 where it's tested on animals, or sometimes a very small portion of human beings. Basically, phase 1 is understanding the pharmacokinetics of the drug and how it processes through the body. And also, it doesn't kill a person taking the medication. That's basically what phase 1 is in a nutshell. Once it gets passes that pharmacokinetic surveillance and also knowing that it doesn't kill anybody, it goes on to phase 2. Phase 2 is, does this drug actually effectively treat what it's designed to treat? That's what phase 2 is all about. Once phase 2 it passes, and also for context, it can fail. A drug can fail and has to be. And if it fails, and it's not approved to go on to the next phase, it needs to go all the way back to pre-phase 1 and be reformed, so that way it doesn't cause the issues it did. And that's why pharma. So on average, it costs anywhere from 85 to 120 million dollars to get a drug from trial to market, because all of the checks and balances between the FDA, the IRB, all the regulatory bodies that monitor these drugs, monitor these trials, and are ensuring that this drug is going to be safe for normal people in the real world to be prescribed this medication. But again, like, I don't expect people to know that. I don't expect people to understand the lengths it takes for medications to get approved, to get to that counter, to get to that prescription counter that you get, right? And that's no fault to them because it's not their profession, it's not their industry. So I don't blame people for that, for not knowing. But anyway, going on to phase 3. Phase 3 is just going to a general patient population. You can't prescribe it yet, but now it's going to healthy volunteers, not healthy, I'm sorry, to actual sick patients who will benefit from this drug. Now we're talking like, okay, now we want to see how much can this treat of this indication, right? Of this sickness. And after that is passed, and then that's been collected, data's been collected and assessed. Then at phase 4, I like to call phase 4 the unofficial approval, because at phase 4, now it's entering doctors' offices, because doctors can't prescribe it to you at that point. But in order for you to take it, you have to sign a consent form, right? But it's basically a prescribed medication with just a little more red tape, if you will. But once it passes phase 4, it becomes a fully fledged approved drug. It now has an official drug name. Like, for example, a good example is Flonase, right? It's actually that's the trade name, but it's actually just what the hell's the fucking name of the actual medication? It's no longer, hold on.
Oh, you
Because
tell
there's
me.
a trade name and there's a science name. It's Flonase, a generic name. There's generic and then there's the trade name. Flonase is the trade name, and then the actual drug of itself is called fluticasone. So, but when it was in trial, it was called fluticasone or identified as a series of numbers and letters like drug MX-13752. That was the drug, the investigational drug name. But because it passed phase 4, now it's an officially approved drug. They gave it a trade name. It was the fluticasone, but then they gave it Flonase. And that's pretty much the process of clinical research, right? But COVID is a very unique situation, right? We were quote unquote under a what was it, a national emergency because of this specific virus called COVID-19. The government announced that it was declaring a national emergency, that we needed to find a treatment or a vaccine for this virus, right?
Yep.
So there is protocol for that to bypass a lot of steps, but it's going to be under heavier surveillance and heavier scrutiny. But I will say this though, there was a lot of checks and balances that were overlooked.
Wolf, there is a
in the
180-second
benefit of
ad
getting that
starting.
drug to market.
Please pause the game if possible,
Now,
so those
the
with ads don't miss
unfortunate
anything.
thing is every time you work on a clinical trial, you sign an NDA. There are some things that I would love to disclose, but I just can't, due to that, and I hate it so much. But what I can tell you is that I had quit midway through the clinical trial for COVID-19 vaccine. Now, what that means is I can't explain why. But nonetheless, though, there were things that happened that I just didn't agree with. But yeah, I can't say specific. I really fucking want to, but I can't. But yeah, in my line of work, I've signed so many NDAs because of all the clinical trials that I work for, a lot of the drugs that I work on. But I will say this: that COVID-19 was probably the most interesting trial that I had the opportunity to work on. Whether that is good or bad, you can denote that for yourself. But what Rabbit said though is very true, right? Long-term side effects, that is taken into consideration, which is why I said traditionally it takes 15 to 20 years for a drug to be approved because of the long-term effects of understanding it. But even then, there is a phase called a surveillance phase where even after a drug is approved, it takes about 5 or 10 more years for surveillance to undergo so they can then understand even longer term effects of that drug. So really, if you want to include that in that, it would take about 20 to 30 years before a drug is fully, truly approved, right? So yeah, I understand where people are coming from, like what Rabbit's saying, right? People are afraid of the unknown, of the long-term downsides of taking this drug. And that's a very fair thing to be critique of, right? That's a very fair thing. And COVID is, again, like I said, it's an outlier of a clinical trial because of the whole national emergency. But that is one thing that I do agree with, that we never understood the long-term side effects of the COVID vaccine. But actually, recently, they've admitted that there were long-term cardiological effects to the heart with the mRNA vaccine from, I think it was Moderna. No, it was for Pfizer, I think. Or I think it was both. I'm not sure, but it was for, I think it was for both. And this is public information, right? They finally admitted that yeah, there are cardiological side effects to some patients who took the mRNA vaccine for COVID-19, which explains, which is kind of interesting because during the pandemic, after the vaccine was quote unquote approved and people were able to get it at like these pop-up sites, right? If y'all remember that, right? Like during whenever it got approved, there was like pop-up sites in random fucking areas where you can get the vaccine. It was kind of weird. But yeah, they admitted that they had that information, but they just never talked about it because they were told not to. But yeah, there has been confirmation that there is a link between cardiological side effects and the vaccine itself. And again, like for me, like I'm a big proponent in transparency, especially in clinical research. and clinical trial research, because it is again, this is the bad side of big pharma, right? It's all about profit, unfortunately. They want to make money, right? And the government basically gave Pfizer and Moderna and Johnson & Johnson a blank check. So they knew that they were going to make so much money off of this. But that's not just them. That's also this research in general, right? So when they're financially motivated, there are things that pharmaceutical companies do, not just the ones I listed, but sometimes they do that. They withhold information. And I can't say anything in particular that I've seen, because again, I'm not going to disclose that. I don't want to get shot by the FDA or whatever. But yeah, it's just one of those things where you kind of look at it and you're like, I don't like that. That's kind of sketchy. But like I said, I had quit mid-trial because of some things that I saw and didn't agree with. And yeah, I just moved on to different indications. Anyway, the outliers will bring out the most misunderstandings and the most controversy. That's why we need to be more understanding of the outliers. Concerns under the right. No, I completely agree.
Yeah,
I 100% agree with that. I don't disagree at all with what you said. But the fact of the matter is that these pharmaceutical companies are the ones who call the shots, because they have the most to gain, and they're also the ones providing the compensation to these clinics to conduct these trials. And again, at the end of the day, it's just all about money. Unfortunately, it's all about numbers.
Yeah.
On top of them wanting to get this drug approved, they know that once they get it approved, they're going to make bank on this drug, or if it gets to that point, right? So that's where the lines kind of blur a bit when it becomes patient safety or financial gain. But that's again, that could be a topic for another day. But yeah, it's disappointing sometimes. But not to say all of them are like that. I've worked with a lot of pharma companies that are. It's funny because a lot of people think big pharma is just one big company. It's not. It's a conglomerate of like hundreds and thousands of pharmaceutical companies. But a lot of people think like most pharma companies are like these big tall ass buildings in like downtown New York or whatever. I've met this is one particular pharmaceutical company that I had the privilege to meet. It's a group of 5 guys, literally 5 guys, and I've met the CEO of this pharmaceutical company. And the reason why he started that company was because his brother was a chemist, and they found a compound that could treat the specific indication. Yeah, that get out of here, rabbit. And then he's like, I know a couple doctors who could sponsor this trial. And that's literally how it started. It was just 5 dudes who decided to try to get this drug approved, and that's how they became a pharmaceutical. It's very easy. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's not that difficult to become a pharmaceutical company like people think it is. It really isn't. Like if you have a combination of a compound or a formula that can treat said indication, you just need a couple doctors to sponsor your money. You just got to sell it to them like this could work. They'll give you the money, and then you go and find clinics who will run the trial for you. You pay them, you get more data from that, and it looks like it's working on to the next phase, and you keep going.
Yeah.
That's how pharmaceutical companies work, right?
Yeah.
But the big ones, right? The big ones that are like on the stock market and like multi-million-dollar companies. I'm not going to say that they're the bad ones, but they are more prone to satisfying the shareholder over patients. And yeah, that's just the unfortunate reality that we live in. But yeah, no, like I totally understand your concerns, Rabbit, and I agree with those 100%. As a clinical researcher myself, I agree with that. And it's just frustrating sometimes seeing like things being swept under the rug like that, and it just because on an ethical standpoint and a more of a moral standing that I have personally, it just doesn't really vibe well with me. Fortunately enough, I have a network that I know of that I'm very fortunate to have the capability to quit a job and then go to another one pretty quickly, just because I've been in this industry for so long. I know people, and if I'm not comfortable with a specific clinic or a pharmaceutical company, I can just pack up and leave and go somewhere else. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Alrighty.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic, but yeah, I was gonna say, it's 11 o'clock. We probably should end it here.
Yeah. We should definitely. I enjoy these. I always love just talking. It's always fun. Yeah, no.
Yeah, Wolf. We should just call it. Is this a podcast? And we start there.
Is this a podcast? Yeah, that'll be what we do.
No HD.
Is this a podcast?
Why did that? Oh, my fucking thing stopped. I'm sorry, Bake. My quota exceeded. Stupid.
Yeah, mine did too. So YouTube's borked.
No, it's Bake. Why does that have the same energy as without me? Whenever Jug said he took a shower.
That's wild.
Every time I see that Big now, it's like no Helldivers without me.
Without me. Alrighty.
No, yeah, this was interesting. Yeah, we're not gonna play Helldivers, Bake. It's late. We're old and I'm tired. I'm sure Wolf's tired too.
Yeah.
But this was an interesting thing. It turned out to be a very productive conversation, and I think we touched on a lot of very quote unquote sensitive topics. But I think I at least for me, I learned a lot. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I learned quite a bit too. You got more information in terms of the actual like testing side of things and whatnot. So it's always good to bounce ideas and thoughts off other people too, because you get different perspectives and whatnot. So yeah, that was fun. We need to do it more.
Yeah, I'm down. Shit, you want to do it tomorrow? No, I'm just kidding.
You want to do it every day?
No, but all right. Well, I'm gonna end stream. I'm gonna hop off Discord and end stream and go to bed.
Yeah. I'm gonna get off too. So.
All right. You have a good night, Brody. Thank you again. Take it easy.
Yep. Bye. Alrighty. Well, that was fun. That was a good conversation to have. But anyway, that's gonna go ahead and do it for the stream. Yeah, I was gonna play some Helldivers tonight, but it was nice to kind of just sit and have a conversation, and discuss some things. It's funny that it turned into that. It was not. It was not intended for it to turn into a whole basically podcast. But yeah, I always enjoyed having those kinds of conversations with other people. And yeah, I've always wanted to do kind of a podcasty thing that talks about some of the different topics and whatnot. But anyway, that is gonna go and do it for the stream. I'm tired. It's late. I did not expect to be on this long. So yeah. But yeah, anyway, that's gonna do it for the stream. So as always, if you're on YouTube, sorry, quota broke. I can't see your messages right now. Or quota didn't break, it just ran out. If you're on YouTube, check the links in the description. If you're on Twitch, check the panels, all that fun stuff. But that's gonna go ahead and do it for me. But yeah, anyway, as always, I hope to see you on this one and the next one. Later.